Okay, comrades, welcome back. We're back. I just got to get our comrade on the screen. Welcome in, comrade SilverSpook.
Hey everybody, aloha. Uh, how's it? Aloha. Everybody's doing well. Hold on, let me mute myself. Um, yeah. Hey, thanks, Larry, for having me on. It's so great to be on. With this amazing comrade and also cousin. Yeah. Thanks for bringing me on.
No problem, no problem. Let me just get. I'm just trying to get you captured here. My damn thing. Oh, I know how best to do this. My stream's kind of held together by duct tape, so just bear with me.
Well, you better at it than me. I only have Scotch tape.
Well, that works too. Great to see you. There we go. Now everybody can see our comrade. Everybody say hello to Comrade SilverSpook.
Hey everybody, I see several of our friends are already in the chat there.
Everybody's here. All right, you want to introduce yourself to those who might not know you in the chat here?
Yeah. If you don't know me, there's a lot there's a lot of crossover, I think. But in case you don't know me, I am SilverSpook. I am Chris Oko Inoa, o Kalihi Vau. I'm native Hawaiian, Kanaka Maoli, from Kalihi, uh, Ahupua'a, which is the land division from the mountain to the ocean here in Hawaii. Um, I'm a education activism, a lot of it on various platforms like Twitch. Like I stream about 3 times a week on this platform. I do YouTube videos like once a week, and then I also like post on lots of different Twitter, etc. sites, and also um, I make video games. That's like my main. I spend the most time doing that. Like Neofeud, it's like the flagship game. Trying to finish a sequel to that, and these are like they're like retro adventure games. I'm like a one person dev, so I do like programming, writing, art, music, basically everything. Um,
One of the
and
only true
so
cyberpunk games on Steam, by the way, comrades. None of that corporate
uh
cyberpunk bullshit.
yeah, exactly. I spent like a lot. I've spent about 2 years just like going off about cyberpunk games and 2077 in particular, but lots of other ones that are not lacking the punk in the cyberpunk. It should be anti-corporate, and a capitalist corporation, certainly can't make an authentic cyberpunk game. That's my personal take on that. Many people will disagree with me. But yeah, I try to do my best with all in the games they're entertaining. They're meant to be also make you think and be educational. And the activism, obviously, I promote the games while I'm streaming, but also talk about a lot of topics, native Hawaiian, indigenous related, geopolitical, just general left related topics, science, tech. I focus a lot in science fiction, science, in futurism, indigenous futurism, and that kind of space, because that's where a lot of my specialty is in. Like I write science fiction, I'm getting into book cover design now also, because I paint as well. I do digital painting, so I do like a variety of things. And yeah, anyway, um,
And you play music on
it's like
stream, as I heard last night.
uh, I also play music. Yeah, I do. I do. Actually, I started playing music first. I've been playing music the longest of everything, like since like seventh grade. I play in like alternative rock bands in like the when I was in high school. I'm like I'm 42, just to date myself. I'm going to be 42 very soon. So I've been doing music a long time, and I do play music sometimes. I also did the soundtrack for Real Food One. That took me like two and a half. Took me a long time because it's 2.5 hours of music.
Yeah, that's
Um,
amazing. New Feud is one of my favorite adventure games I've ever seen. A lot of work I've seen come out of Comrade Spook are on the levels of projects such as Disco Elysium. Massive props, says Rouge Aurora.
yeah, thanks a lot, Rouge. Disco Elysium is there's a lot of crossover. I feel I have a little bit larger team than me, not by much, but uh, they thanked Marks and Engels at the Game Awards, I believe. So, shout out to left game devs. Sadly, I've heard that the Zaum team, unfortunately, has been taken. They have had a corporate cyberpunk dystopian takeover by the capitalists have kind of screwed over a lot of the main team very sadly. Uh, but yeah, it's a very like story and writing and like story heavy game. This Coliseum, uh, get it's definitely has a lot of crossover. Neophyte is more like a more classic '90s retro adventure game, but not but like um it's a science fictional story, and it's a little bit more satirical, and it's a little bit lower budget maybe, but there's a lot of similarity there. Yeah.
Yeah, something I think you'd all enjoy. And I know you also talk quite a bit on your stream about movies and stuff too. Something I think people around here will, quite a few of my viewers also enjoy. I watched one of your YouTube videos where you did a discussion about like Dune and white saviorism messages and stuff like that. That I thought it was really good and interesting. I talk about that quite a bit because I always hear like, white saviorist type of messaging coming from a lot of our, what we like to call our friends on the left.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely like yeah, I did spend a lot of time talking about I was basically doing movie reviews for a while, and just this is why this is Imperial Ayn Rand propaganda, the motion picture screen guide of American preservation of American values propaganda, and yeah, Dune, and yeah, there's a lot white saviorism in that. Yeah, there's yeah, I do kind of I go I until like kind of like I guess it's kind of common in like YouTube video essay and various oh, uh work, but I kind of like I do kind of start from a pop culture thing sometimes, and then especially films and especially science fiction, because I spent a lot of time in that realm, and kind of then talk about what this is saying, and like how you know various imperial capitalist colonial propaganda is like in that, and even though you're not really necessarily thinking about it, but you're like automatically just kind of being you are being like marinated in it, even though you're not really thinking about like Dune is basically, in a lot of ways, it's just like U.S. strategies, imperial strategies in Central West Asia, right? But and not really, uh, and not really, and even just like calling the antagonist Vladimir itself a choice. There's just so many things going on in there.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I could go off forever on any one of these, so I should probably stop and focus on the question.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, but we get you on so that we can hear you talk. Everybody hears me talk every day of the week around here, so
Yeah. I tuned into your streams also. I was glad to be in on the Tuesday and then the other days, and I was like, you definitely have it down better than myself. I have to figure out. I'm trying to figure out a little bit more how it works, but and I was watching when I was watching your stream. I was like, you have a CGTN video, and then you had like I just saw KJ No on earlier, so that's I'm like, oh, these are all the
yeah,
people that
breakthrough
usually
news, yeah.
my breakthrough news CGTN video. I'm like, oh, this is like my series of names and videos somewhere on one of the platforms. I will get an update usually within every day or every few days. So yeah, I was like, yeah, that's basically what I do.
I'm constantly telling people to this tune into you because, like, I mean, the thing is, like, when I listen to your stream or like my positions, we're pretty much the same when it comes to talking about China or like leftist inability in the West to stand in solidarity with China and anti-imperialist movements, even if they might not explicitly call themselves communist necessarily, right? Like, for example, even Russia, which we know there's plenty criticism I'm sure you could make of internal things in Russia, but on the international stage, Russia contributes to anti-imperialist struggle in a way that no European country, of course, does because they're the ones perpetrating the the U.S.-led imperialist system. And of course,
Yeah,
getting a little bit of a following here, I'm getting all kinds of nice names at me, like that I'm a campist and all of these other funny things that Westerners like to say. I'm constantly telling
Yeah.
people go tune into SilverSpook. I'm not the only one saying this shit. I just happen to be loud about it.
Yeah, it's like well, I'm glad that we're two indigenous people in the NORAD's orbit, trying to be honest about like the other most of the whole freaking Earth, right? And like if you put Russia, if you put the bricks together, that's most of the Earth, and it's just like yeah, there's a lot of yeah. I mean, when you're talking in the English and in the Western, we're in so-called Canada or in the fake U.S. state of Hawaii, you get lots of people saying, "Oh, SilverSpook, I'll listen to you. I'll listen to you about some random tidbit about hula. I'll listen to you about how bad I am for hurting Native Hawaiians, or I'll listen to you about canoe building. I don't want to hear anything about China, Russia, or the vast majority of the Earth that is actually be central to undoing U.S. empire. That's on top of Hawaii. It's so annoying. I swear.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
glad that we can be annoyed together.
I mean, yeah. Well, it's like these things might be a little bit connected, you know. The imperialism that China and the U.S. or that China had to fight off from the U.S. and that DPRK had to fight off from the U.S. might be a little bit, related to the colonialism that we fight against in Hawaii or so-called Canada or the U.S. There might be a little bit of a connection there, but Westerners don't want to see that because it's against their interests, ultimately. They actually stand in solidarity. They would rather just sort of have like the imagination that they're revolutionary and that they want this better world, but they don't want to have to take the path to get there, which is to be under the leadership of the people whose land this belongs to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I don't know. Should I try to talk about that, or I'll just try to be nice? But sometimes I feel like I'm increasingly less feeling like it's time to be nice. It's time to be a little bit more direct about that. But I think like if there's many people like that I know that like I know like Neuroride is in Scandinavia. We've got several people that are they're at least they're Western of some kind, or they were they currently live in the US even if they're not necessarily, and they are like slowly coming on board. I think as more people go back and forth to especially China with the new policy that you can easily come in with the free 10 I forget the exact how long 10-day plus visits, and a lot of people are the US is trying to stop that. The imperialists is trying to stop that, but like I think it's the floodgates are going to start. I mean, I don't know what they're going to try to stop it from opening, but I feel like we're making some progress, and I'm being slightly less frustrated. Like I know the whiter and more westerny and more liberally and more upper class the circle, the more they're kind of like, but China killed 200 trillion people. Stalin, I don't know, some nonsense,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. 100
Authoritarian.
gorillion or whatever the hell. Yeah,
Yeah, and so but I think that for the average working, or just an average working American, sometimes it's even worse if you have a Western college education, because a lot of that again, it's kind of like that again, like that just ubiquitous propaganda that's just like you're marinating in it. It's like the more Western books you read of any kind, fashion, history book, it's just you're just like soaking in that. And so even like people who don't actually have a higher 4 year, bachelor plus education, you're actually more open to just going, oh, wow, my life sucks in America, but how's in China? It's actually better. Okay, well, I'm gonna go check that out. You're saying my rent is like $200, or North Koreans have better, their healthcare and their housing access is better. That's like, but if you have like if you're especially like a liberal, or you don't acknowledge that you're a liberal and you call yourself left of some kind, and you have that, but you're like you've read so many more New York Times bestsellers, or any kind of Western books. It just I remember I was just reading a random library book. It was like it was some like it was like witches. I can't remember if it was witches or it was like I do sci-fi fantasy, so I'm like trying to keep up with the genre. Like something about science fiction. I might have been like a young adult novel, but it was like in it. It just like drops in like, and this African leader was authoritarian, and what are we? Are we a bunch of North Koreans? It's everywhere. If you look
Oh
closely, it's
yeah,
just everywhere. Like,
yeah,
we're nice we're white middle class freedom loving Canadian Vancouverites. What are we? A bunch of North Koreans? We're not gonna like right. The way that the people understand that like calling saying like don't say stuff like you're off the reservation because it has like anti-indigenous characteristics. Or there's like some things that people realize. Oh, that's kind of has problematic origins. But when you say stuff like, "What are we a bunch of North Koreans?" Like, what are we a bunch of you know Stalinites? Or when you or referring to like there's all these little offhanded references that are just like completely glossed over. And it makes it hard for me to even read anything really in the West
yeah,
because it's just full with that. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah.
yeah. No, I mean, I like one thing I try and push back against a lot of the DPRK propaganda, just because I feel like it's so unbelievably ridiculous when it comes to that. And like I can point out to people like there is no shred of existent of evidence that exists for like 99% of these claims made about DPRK. There have been defectors coming out of DPRK for, almost 100 years now. And they come out with all of these horror stories and everything else. But incredibly, they have not made it out with phones or cameras or pictures that, like, actually document any of these things in all of this time. But yet, Vice News and all of these other organizations somehow are constantly getting out all of these quote unquote pictures that Kim Jong Un doesn't want you to see. So like either the Great Magnet Wall of DPRK that erases all the pictures when people cross the border, either it doesn't work or there's something they're not telling us there maybe.
Yeah, yeah. There's this hilarious channel. It was called I think it was called like it was I think it's a Chinese diaspora. Well, it was like raised in Canada and then I went back to China. It was a channel called New Moves. He had these hilarious videos. He's in China. But he was raised basically Canadian, but like of Chinese heritage, and now he's like, I'm never going back to Canada, and he'll walk around the subway and it'd be like, it was I think it was like during when COVID was like 2022, and it was like look at all these reanimated like there's a beautiful subway, high speed rail, everything's clean, everyone's like happy, and everyone's walking about because they had a very competent right testing tracing COVID policy that minimized the deaths and illnesses by so much right because that's what happens when you have socialism with their characteristics and it was like walking around like look at all these reanimated dead bodies by the Chinese AI CCP's zombies that are forced to walk around the subway and get on clean subways. Look at the Chinese forced to buy $1 lunches with high quality vegetables and fruits, and look, it's horrible what the communism has done to these poor Chinese. It was just hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when I say stuff like that, I get like you like kind of what you were saying earlier. I get like well, the one that sticks out in my head, one of the most famous ones is told me that I was using my indigeneity as a shield to protect the great leaders of campism from criticism or something, referring to of course Kim Il Sung and like I'm like this is incredible. Like you're calling Kim Il Sung a campist, a man who brought together millions of Koreans from all different political affiliations and like backgrounds. But yeah, okay, Kim Il Sung was a great leader of campism or something. It's so annoying, and I am kind of like doing what you were saying about trying to be nicer. Like I am trying to go into more liberal spaces, more not necessarily entirely radical, and just like make an appearance, but I cannot help but be annoying. You know what I mean? Like, if I hear them saying some stuff about Vietnam or saying some egregious shit about, like, or parroting imperialist propaganda about Russia or whatever it is, I can't help myself. Like, I gotta type into chat and I gotta keep going, basically. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I can't stop myself. I'm the loud, annoying. I'm the loud, annoying guy.
Well, it's a tough job, but someone has to do it. You're the cousin that has to do it. Sorry, like um, yeah, it's I feel like it's something I pick my battle. It depends on how much spoons I have. I tend to just kind of say my piece sometimes sometimes I'll consider responding in certain circumstances. But I think you said earlier, like I can't personally convince. I think you're talking to somebody in the chat. I can't personally one on one convince each person of what is the correct position. I gotta a lot of people to share information and education with. And that's because I remember on Twitter for a while I was getting like huge amounts of like millions of people sharing especially my Hananike Trust, like the Hawaii posts about the illegal occupation, stealing our land, imprisoning our leaders, banning our language or culture, forceful colonization of Hawaii by the U.S. That would get like 3 millions and millions of people would share that for whatever reason, algorithm, whoever was following me.
Yeah.
And we'll get like thousands of people, right? Like liberal, right wing, freaking, NAFO dog creepazoids, all kind of everyone, right? Just in my chat, like adding me, get this professor, get this Native Hawaiian professor, like excommunicated from the University of Hawaii. Like they just assume I'm a professor. That's why I'm not a professor. I would have to shut up. If I was one, that's why I just make games independently and try to, it's like Hawaii style. Like I'm not a Juche necessarily because I'm not North Korea, but we do try self-reliance and independent economic structures as best as possible. Because
Yeah, yeah.
but when I was doing that, I remember like I was like, should I respond? If like it was like 1,000 in my mentions. I mean, it was the first time I had that. And I'm like, I cannot. I physically do not have the space and time. Like I'm a science fiction author, so sometimes but I don't have the ability to like time dilate and clone myself to respond to each one of these 1,000
Yeah,
people
no.
that are incorrect. But anyway, so I realized I was like, you know what? I gotta just pick. Like if somebody said something and I particularly want to comment on it, then but it really depends though. Like on certain like if it's like in a community and I'm like talking to people and like these are like core people that are the cool people. Like if somebody I had my like Christmas get together and I was like, if somebody I really like and respect and work with in organizing capacity of some kind, and they say something and I'm like, I like personally talk to that person because like I feel like it's important to like, hey, let's talk about that. I think Hawaii should be a state. If somebody actually, I'm thinking of somebody right now who's like saying stuff like, I think it was on that street, or I don't want to say who, I don't want to call anybody out, but it's like somebody that also is a creator. They do good work, and I'm like, they had like a bad take. They were like, um, but Stalin killed a whole lot of people. Several people were like, they're kind of like, we'll address that. Other people in the chat were addressing that, and like maybe.
I think that was a panel I was supposed to come on that day too. I think I remember this because I had to go with my kids and then I saw it like in my chat. People were like, "Yo, the panel! Somebody's talking about Stalin on the panel."
Yeah, and it was like and it's here saying like you kind of go into some more liberally spaces and that's a situation where like later on I or somebody else somebody kind of like help our because somebody I value them. They're like do a lot of good work. They're like in good faith. They're not just somebody that's like some AI generated a Gen AI CIA directed Mark Zuckerberg Meta constructed freaking bot or sock puppet or something or just some disingenuous troll. Like that person is like I have actually worked with them and I'm like and I've had stuff with them before. Actually, I don't want to talk to, but I don't want anyone to hate on that person because they do actually good work. It's just like people are coming from like I had worse takes. I had worse.
No, and this is the thing too, though. Like you say, you don't. The thing that I do have a habit around here, and comrades in chat are pretty aware of this. That I do name out streams that I see like make like a weird take or like do an anti-China take or whatever the heck it is. I have like named them by name before like, but the thing I always stress is that like whenever I say like I've said JT at second thought, like I wish that they would, for example, talk more about settler colonialism, and I'm constantly just reminding my chat that like I'm not saying these things, or I'm not saying like, this was a weird China take by this channel because I'm telling people not to watch that channel, or because I'm saying I dislike even that person or whatever, right? I'm pointing it out to point out this is an incorrect line. Maybe people want to try and like mention it once in a while or whatever else. Like it's more because I would like to see people who are trying to spread radical left education get a better understanding on imperialism and stuff. Not because I want to see them canceled or something like this, which I think is a difference between like kind of, the settler way of doing things and you know, the other way of doing things, which is to actually talk as a collective and discuss things. And settlers are just so trained not to do that. So the moment you say something like, "Hey, this was a weird China take this person made. I wish they would get better on this topic," they immediately see that and they're like, "Oh, well, this is cancel culture," or whatever the hell that they say, right? And it's like you criticize somebody, you point out a bad position because you respect that person and you want to see them get better on you want to see them improve incorrect positions, not because you disrespect them and you want to dunk on them or whatever. It's like criticism comes from a place of wanting improvement, in my opinion. At least that's how I always thought of it.
Yeah, I think the hard thing is like it's hard to know it's like well yeah when you're discuss yeah like for Hawaiians and like a lot of Asian culture too because like in Hawaii we have a huge I'm actually from a Chinatown in Hawaii. That's the area that I'm from, and like with culture, I was like raised in that kind of space, and like that is how you address things like in Hawaii, and also indigenous people I know inside of the North Turtle Island, and it's hard to know like are you because on the internet all this space is like which one am I in right now because you can because also I've had to be in a lot of like Western style colonial spaces where it's all just trying to be right and is this person good or bad and just like that what you're kind of saying that's kind of not a great way to interact with your fellow humans, right? And so like so you can like sometimes I'll get my own like bristles up quick because I'm used to interacting in like US colonizer, just debate bro bullshit spaces. And so yeah, it can be hard to do it. Like it's hard to do that like in big public settings sometimes at the same time. So I totally get what you mean. I just want to answer somebody's questions because I see somebody. I'm going to
Yeah,
try.
yeah, go right ahead.
One of my New Year's resolutions is like actually be better at socializing and paying attention to chat and having more events because I was supposed to get so caught up in my game dev stuff. I'm like I don't have time. And I just want to answer this chat question, which is what is the best way to go about independent game production for solo devs? I can't. I'm not sure what the exact answer for that is. I will say that like, just start making games that are easy that you can make and try to make and finish projects. I use Adventure Game Studio, but that's because I make very specific types of games. I'm like a solo dev. Just I would say and just hook up with other indie devs. If you are an indigenous dev, there's the indigenous devs server that I will try to find and or just hit me up somewhere on the Discord or one of the social spaces. And if you are, there's a whole indigenous game dev server where we have lots of really cool people and that all are really willing to help each other. I mean, they help me out a lot as well. So I just want to say that as well. Anyway, yeah.
Robo uses Unity. Any experience
I
with
have used
Unity?
Unity. I have used Unity. Unity is it's indie games are made in Unity. It's one of the most popular engines. The reason why I don't use it now is because it's a little bit of a steeper learning curve, and it has some it's a larger corporate product that has it took me like a half an hour to get it to run on my computer one time, and then I saw a lot of problems with like they have a lot of like paid, it's like Adobe products. They have a lot of tricks to try to make money from their. It's a little bit enshittified. I'm trying to dance around that bush. I would say now people still use it because it's powerful, it's popular,
Yeah.
it's easy. But I've used the AGS I'm using right now. I'm good at it. The AGS is old. It's like 2000. It's like millennial. I feel it's like millennial core piece of software. It's really like made to do a specific kind of game, but it has like it's like 20 megabytes. It's tiny. It like there's no corporate. It's open. I think it's open source or Creative Commons everything. So you can do everything standalone. It doesn't port to Xbox and PlayStation and everything as easily. But like the kind of games I'm making are like mostly geared towards I would say like 35 to 50, but you don't have to be that old. But I mean, it's they're like retro adventure games, so it's a kind of certain kind of game. Anyways, yeah. Long story short, I don't know. Depends on what you're making. But Unity is. I'm working with a team that uses Unity as well. Just to also say that. I have this other game called Terminus Macha. That's a game where. Well, that's a long story, but it's another apocalyptic in situ apocalypse that kind of make the sky kind of looks like San Francisco and Los Angeles right now. It's a red sky, everything's on fire. But that game is like a 3D game, and there's a sequel to that they're using Unity. Yeah, that's a game about homeless socialist, communist hacktivists, all just drone strikes and jailbreaks, firefighter slaves in San Francisco. It tries to bring about revolution in the United States. That's what the whole game's about. It's actually a Deus Ex mod. If anybody plays that game.
I've never actually played Deus Ex, but I have heard lots of good things about it. Always meant to.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite. I just had my kids play some of it. Uh, we all played it together. I had to play through some of it, and there's a uh, it's a really good scene. It's a 20-year-old game, but there's a really good scene in it. Like early on, it's one of the first games that made you really think about the what you're doing in the game. Like you start off, you basically work for the CIA. You're a United Nations UNATCO's United Nations Anti-Terrorism Coalition, right? Which is obviously the terrorism doing coalition, and we talk about it's the U.S. led. You're the U.S. led rules based order rule enforcer. Basically, that's how it starts. With nanotech augmentations, you have like a super agent, right? And then you're sent in to stop. There's a company called Orso Life that is owned by a huge tech slash biotech mogul who is also creating viruses and also selling the cures or treatments for these viruses, super viruses that are killing huge quantities of people. And he's blackmailing senators by getting them sick with this nanotechnologically created, like it's just some science fiction virus, and then selling him the cure, and then controlling the U.S. Congress by forcing them to be in his pocket. I mean, it's saying a lot of things at once, and also it's very on the nose considering what the United States, especially the Democratic Party, and certain pharmaceutical companies, U.S. corporations have been doing in many places, including Africa and Ukraine. Anyways, so that yeah, Deus Ex is, and then when you go in at the end of the first level, you have to the Statue of Liberty gets blown up, and you have to stop terrorists who are uh, terrorists are people who are basically organizing to get the treatment for this horrible disease, right? Off of ships, and they're stealing the treatment. It's like the Gray Death ambrosia vaccine, and get it to the people for free, right? And you talk to their leader, right? You as the United States Special Forces, you're like the United States CIA, FBI agent or whatever, right? With cooler sunglasses, and you look like a Matrix. You look like Keanu Reeves in the Matrix. That makes
Yeah,
you look
yeah, yeah. I remember
cool
this.
CIA. You remember that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're the cool CIA. That's like, hey, stop giving people free healthcare. Freaking Cuban. That's basically like how it starts. That's not what he says, but I mean, you're on the wrong side, right? And then it's like, and then the guy says, who's the bigger terrorist? Huge corporations and governments that control entire world events, and you don't even know who the hell they are. I'm just trying to get free medicines to people. You're the thug, pulling triggers for the U.S. empire. I mean, basically what he says, and so you have to like kind of question what side you were on. And I thought that was, it was 2000 that game came out.
Yeah, yeah.
It was anyway, yeah.
Lesbian Hot Sauce says Metal Gear Solid did that for me when you were pretend CIA and then it breaks the fourth wall and gets very meta about the war machine and stuff. Blew my tiny mind. See, that's another franchise I definitely have need to play more of is Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah, Metal Gear it has a lot of similarities. That's like the Hideo, what's his the Japanese game developer of Metal Gear Solid. Why is it Hideo Kojima? Yeah.
Yeah, Hideo
Um.
Kojima, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely directly related. Also, what's up to Big Teal? Thanks for.
Hey, Big
Oh,
Teal.
and I gotta keep track of everybody on the chat, but I'm sorry. Yeah.
Deus Ex, the original, although it's bad voice acting, but one of the smartest game plots ever written. All right, all right. I'll have to play it on stream sometime. I play a lot of older games, so it could be an interesting choice. Kubashi seems interesting. Where can I get the game? What? Oh, I'm sure you can get Deus Ex still on Steam, I imagine.
Yeah, it's often like 87 cents when it's on sale. It's very cheap.
Oh, SilverSpooks you can also get on Steam. We actually
Oh,
have a
oh yeah,
link
you
for
can get Neofeud.
SilverSpook's game right here. There's the link right
Yeah.
there.
If anybody has questions about Neofeud, if you got stuck in any part of the game or your questions, now is the time you can ask me all the questions you want about it. Because people ask me that, how do I do this or that? And I used to go in streams and just answer people's questions about. I don't have time to do that for all the people that stream Neofeud. Thankfully, some people are still playing it. Thank goodness, because we definitely need the money. But yeah, if you do have questions, feel free to ask them. Yeah, but
There
yeah,
you
it's
go.
just to tie that up.
It's like a
Go ahead.
free call-in Nintendo hotline. Anybody who needs help.
Yeah, Nintendo Hotline. I still love that. Does 90 shows. I am your personal Game Informer magazine. I am your game genie. I tell you all the.
I love it. Oh, I have a whole bunch of people in chat that were asking here about Godot. Have you ever used the game development tool Godot?
Yeah. Is it yeah Godot or Godot? I've never actually heard it pronounced out loud, but whatever. Either Godot. I yeah. I have heard it suggested. It's been suggested to me by several people because it has similarities to the Adventure Game Studio and Unity.
It's
I have not
Godot.
used it.
Okay, thanks, Rogue. Thanks, Rouge.
I'm not using myself. Yeah, but I heard good things about it.
Not a question, but just want to say the part where you inspect the home was rough, despite trying to look out for the couple. Great job with that whole build.
Yeah, that's referring to a scene in Neofeud with that's the most intense scene in Neofeud. I think is definitely it's like I almost cut that whole scene. It's a very hard scene because and this we're both indigenous people here, so it's definitely coming from it's a real experience. I mean, I haven't personally had that experience, but basically, there's a CPS inspection that you are involved in, and children get taken, marginalized children get taken from their parents, and like, yeah, so it's a very and death is involved in it at the same time. The police are involved in it. SWAT police are involved in it. So
Yeah. And
yeah,
stuff that still
that scene was
happens
very
today.
yeah yeah, and it's like yeah, it's because yeah, and it's I was kind of like I almost cut it because like oh man, this is gonna be very like it's very intense. It's like know, uh, it could be re-traumatizing for it's certainly going to be reliving some trauma, and people might be turned off by it because I was like, I don't want people to just get depressed. It's part of why Neophyte is so full with comedy because there's some really hard things happening in that. The whole thing is a very depressing. It's a dystopian hyper capitalist, or it's kind of looking closer to just normal America today. But yeah, that's one of the important scenes that I put in there. But people have said like after that scene, I really I used to kind of think, oh yeah, there's some problems with racism, or there's some problems with anti-indigeneity, or maybe the police and the U.S. government have some problems. But there's just a few bad apples. But then it really made me like think about how like the police, social services system, the government, and I myself, because I have worked in government or nonprofit or this and that, and like I'm complicit in all of this child stealing, kidnapping, and all the prison, police, military, social services, all that industrial complex that like crushes indigenous people for settler colonialism and capitalism. And so, yeah. Anyway, I'm glad that worked for you. Yeah.
Yeah, something that I try to like related to that actually, something I try to point out to my comrades because I know there's talk about last indigenous residential school closing in 1996 and all of this other stuff, but something I try to point out to comrades is that actually Child Protective Services really just took the job that the residential school system used to do, and they essentially privatized it. So, like, for example, there's the claim that says that apparently when they take kids away from their home, they're supposed to prioritize giving them to First Nations families. But in practice, that's not what happens. They end up going to a settler family where, best case scenario, they never see their culture or their family on that side ever again. And you can imagine on more the other end of that spectrum, it gets as bad as the conditions that they experienced in those residential school systems, physical abuse, torture, all of those things. Because we know some of the settlers who adopt those children, they have bad intentions, horrible intentions going right into it from the beginning.
Yeah, I remember like yeah. One of the indigenous streamers has actually lost to at first reached out because he was one of the survivors of 60 scoop and all that horrible abuse by this the settler Canadian government, and it was like yeah, there's a lot that's even it's really sad because even my own family, sometimes this is really hard to bring up. My own family is native Hawaiian. They're like Hawaiian of the Hawaiian nation, but they did deny, like they deny that that even happened to themselves. It's really sad. And my dad is denied to my face, like residential schools never happened. This is just there's just some nice Catholic priests and some people got tuberculosis. It was like so hard to that self or the colonization of the minds of people. My parents are both like they identify first as like Catholic. It's they're not bad people either. There's a lot of aspects. The sad thing is so many aspects about them is very Hawaiian. Like they're very generous. Like they give so much of themselves. We're talking about some things are just like indigenous ways of doing it, the ways of conversing and talking, and the ways of like uh they just give so much of their energy, and it's sad because they're like raised in Catholic schools. They go to Catholic church. My dad almost became a Catholic Jesuit priest at one point, right? The Catholic Church, and they both Catholic school teachers, but the Catholic Church has like exploited their labor for like 40 years. Like they live in like a falling apart house. Like they have never, my mom never took a single day off for 30 years, right? And the church even said, guilt tripped her. They said, like, do you really, even for my own sister's graduation, the church said, like, do you really need to take that day off? Because we really need you to come in that summer. Like she was working for free in the summer for the Catholic Church. She's a native Hawaiian woman. A Catholic school priest, like the teachers in the Catholic school like broke her hands. That's why she doesn't speak Hawaiian. When she spoke Hawaiian in school, they took out a hose with a metal end and they like shattered her hand, right? And if you bring up Hawaiian language to my mom, she will just freak out, right? She doesn't want to deal with that. The history, she just can't. It's a post traumatic survive. Every school in Hawaii is a boarding school, by the way. Every single school. Hawaii is an occupied country, so it's every single side. Every single school in Hawaii is a genocidal school, with very few exceptions of like Hawaiian controlled Hawaiian immersion schools, and it's like anyway. But that's one of the things. That's why I get like sometimes I cannot control it. I get like I'll just go off for a long period of time. I'll start seeing red. That's a lot of my life is that. But it's like, but then I remember I worked as a social worker, like in Neofield. Carl Carbon is like trying to help these kids. He's working as he's like a social government agent. But like I was like I taught as part of the social services like STEM and impoverished at-risk kids in the poorest parts of the United States, which is in Hawaii. Actually, it's like 70% poverty rates in the area I'm from. The average income is $5,000 per year. 5,000 per year for these certain demographics, like especially nowadays, it's like Micronesian, Marshallese, they're like the latest people that have come in. And I'm like watching all these kids, like that's what Neophyte is based on. Is when I was trying to help these impoverished kids, like have any kind of basically parents around and have any kind of support network, teaching them STEM and robotics and programming and just like being somebody there for them. Like they're living like 42 a house in falling apart conditions. The parents are like freaking like slaves in
Oh, we lost your
care.
sound for a sec.
Oh, is it back? Hopefully.
Yeah, it's back now.
Okay. Anyways, but I'll cut. But long story short, it's just like so. A lot of neophyte is based upon my own experiences in all that historically, and also like working in for like a decade in that, and I forget where we started from. But yeah, anyway, long story short, yeah, it's really bad, and people, yeah, No, it's matter really. It doesn't really matter how much I say about Hawaii. It's gonna be still uh, like so much propaganda about it, and it's just like Lilo and Stitch, Moana, 54 states, and freaking Boo Hawaii. But it's like it's literally statistically, empirically, the poorest. If you count Hawaii, Hawaii is an occupied colony, and that's actually part of the secret there, right? It's actually occupied colony. 75% of the population is not white, and it's an illegally occupied country. But if it was a state, it's the worst in police murder, in everything, incarceration. Uh, yeah, it's just yeah.
As you would expect in an occupied police fucking state, I guess, by a bunch of settlers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Anyways, that's me. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's very appreciate you talking about where you got the story from Neo Feud from. Everybody should go play and buy Neo Feud if you haven't played it. I do want to stream it sometime now that we got some bigger numbers here. Now that the stream's a little bit healthier.
Yeah, we got like 100 people earlier today, so congratulations on that.
Yeah, I don't know how. I'm very thankful that we have so many people watching. Appreciate y'all being here for the discussion and all of that. Yeah, I do think that like I think that like what you say though about like it doesn't matter what you say, that there's the propaganda will always exist. I think is part of the reason also why we do have to make sure we always stand like in solidarity with these other anti-imperialist movements like China, like the international situation like that Russia engages in, even fighting against Ukrainian fucking Nazis and everything else. Like I think that we do have to stay on the right side of that because like you say, people are becoming more and more aware, and especially with Trump, even more pulling the mask off of the fascist apartheid imperialist system of the United States. I think it's just so important for our voices and other indigenous comrades like Manapua, who are you do have a proper anti-imperialist line, that we continue talking our lines, like no matter how annoying people might think that we are in the beginning or whatever else, because I think that being on the truthful side of history is much better than like say avoiding talking about you know pushing back against like China is imperialist lines and stuff like that, because you fear that you might lose viewers, or you fear that. I think that you're better off addressing that stuff directly, because as time goes on, people are going to find out the truth, right? And so if you avoid those topics, or you just say what you think the mainstream background, the most appealing thing is, eventually it's going to come back and you delegitimate yourself.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I want to address. I'll answer what you said, but I want to answer a few of these questions on this. Thanks a lot to Rebel Gaming, and if you can speak to about it, do any work with Nation of Hawaii, maybe I'll come back to. I'll answer that maybe a bit later. But short answer is like not. I'm not on that same little location where they are, but I do know of them. I support them. Nation of Hawaii. But yeah, anyway, yeah. But what you're saying about yeah, the propaganda, Larry. Like yeah, that's sometimes I feel so alone in that. So it's really nice to have you around.
No, I'm the same way.
Sometimes.
I'm thinking that about you right now. So
Yeah, yeah. It's good that we're there's the Luigi brothers, which is Luigi and his brother, fighting UH. Let's see. No, I'm just kidding. He's not. It's the UH. He's not the guy who did it. And we're the Mario brothers. I was trying to make a Mario Brothers joke, like just us two versus all the Bowsers and all the freaking decrepit
well,
mushrooms and
actually, I'll tell you a funny theory that we've created on my channel, because I'll show you. I got this costume here for what I do on Mario Mondays, and as you can see, it's a Bowser costume. So we created the new theory where Bowser is actually the revolutionary one, you see, and he's got all of this ridiculous anti Bowser propaganda dumped over his head, you see, where Mario is actually an animal abuser. He he abused Donkey Kong so much that Donkey Kong stole his girlfriend Pauline in Donkey Kong. And then he goes throughout the Mushroom Kingdom and Dinosaur Land, like conquering all of these lands to make way for the Toad settlers to come in, restoring the monarchy of Princess Toadstool time and time again, right? He's a class traitor. He's your typical settler, class traitor, working class guy, right? Working for the monarchy, an agent. And I also point out that Bowser, if you in Mario Party, takes the wealth and redistributes it evenly among all of the people.
Yeah. That's great. I totally get that now. Yeah. Um, yeah. I guess if you're Bowser, let's see, what's your favorite anime? Um, um, oh, what is that? The bullet guy. I always like the bullet guy. The guy that gets fired out of the cannon.
Yeah, Bullet Bill. Yeah, yeah.
Bullet Bill. I'm like Bullet Bill except more silvery or something. I don't know.
Silver
Pierce the
Bullet
heart
Bill.
of Tony. Yeah. Silver Bullet Bill piercing the vampire heart of Tony Blinken and uh 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 something like that. Yeah, and yeah, definitely. Yeah,
I feel
definitely
like
get
there's
that.
a video
If
game
you know
being developed here. Just the concept of a game being developed here.
that's it. Yeah, one of you aspiring indie developers in this chat right now. I know there's at least three. One make and then give us distribute some of the wealth equally to us, and we will be happy. No, just kidding. But I do randomly make though. Full disclosure, I do randomly make little small game projects while I have this huge 7-year Neofeud 2 I'm trying to finish, but I do make smaller game projects. Decolonators is one of the small. I made that in a month, where you play the Vietnamese communists fighting the U.S. Empire. It's all F-16s, and it's
I beat
U.S.
that. I did
Army.
beat that game.
Yeah, you can beat that in 20 minutes. You get to shoot Margaret Thatcher down. You blow John McCain's slightly less evil twin, John McCain. John McCain went to hell already. He's the evilest.
Such a funny game.
Yeah.
We'll have to get. Oh, I think we actually have a link to all of your stuff now. Yeah, there we go. There's all the different ways you can find a SilverSpook's work. There's Twitch, the YouTube. I think we're missing your itch though. You got an itch.io, right?
Yeah, there is a SilverSpook. Yeah, let me get that. It's SilverSpook itch.io. It's if you go to one of the Neofeud itch sites, you can get like just the yeah. It should be in the chat there.
There we
That's
go. Perfect.
all of my yeah.
I'll add that to your command too, actually. So when we use your command, that comes up.
Yeah, somebody shout out Luna Oi. Luna Oi is a Vietnamese a Vietnamese creator, and yeah, Luna is a comrade. I did several events with Luna, they are partner there. And yeah, Luna does voice the Vietnamese communist fighter with the tank, with the PT-76 Soviet tank. Everyone. Yeah, so that's gonna help with the research too. I was like, Luna, does this approximate? What does it look like? She suggested, oh, this is the tank that we used in the fighting the American Empire. So I tried to, at least the tank. I mean, I don't give a crap. I mean, Margaret. What is it? Margaret. Margaret Bush. George Thatcher. I don't care about Westerners don't deserve to have their history accurately represented. They don't accurately represent their own selves.
Yeah, no.
Right? And they lie about us. So my favorite part was watching all of these, like, I don't know, the guy who starts with the letter V, all these like liberal or right or white tubers or twitchers or commentators getting mad that like Margaret Thatcher didn't ever go to Vietnam, getting mad about like, hey, you don't get the joke. B, who cares? Oh, your shit sucks, you colonizer. Anyways,
Yeah. That's hilarious to me. I mean, if there's one thing that I've become somewhat known for, it's pissing off bigger content creators or whatever, or the more, the 6F variety, the FFF, the hexadecimal code for white.
yeah, exactly. Sometimes I say know what? I went to my our one of our language days. We're playing Scrabble. Like I do write, so I'm trying to like make sure I don't use too many of the same word again and again. And we're playing, and I said, kids, what is all of the words for white? It's a snow colored. Think of all the white things. Snow colored flowers. Okay, flower people, snow people, cocaine, milk, milky. XF. I never thought of that one though. So good.
Yeah, that's my favorite one. That's from back in that's from back Facebook days. Avoid getting the Zuckerberg ban. You would, instead of saying anything that could be directly known as what you're talking about, you just say the hexadecimal code instead.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, but yeah, and like, back to what you're saying originally about the propaganda. And a part of it is like trying to get through all of the de-ranking algorithmic punishment, trying to get like a YouTube and a lot of other uh, s- uh, sites content seen. It's just been like it's just like what words can I say, right? I have to use 6F. I mean, you can't say I always spell out a lot of these words. That's what I do a lot of time, like the PALESTINE. On I noticed for sure on like YouTube, if you say anything related to the whole Middle East region in any kind of way, and several other things, it just like I can see like nobody is finding that, or a lot of people are like, hey, what happened to your video? I subscribed to you, right? So yeah, that's and then yeah, so that makes that's been a nightmare. And yeah, yeah. Yeah, but back to like the propaganda. We're talking about like the Hawaii and the propaganda we have to push back when it comes to like China, Russia. Um, uh, that's part of why I like to talk about those things because I'm like, I don't I mean, like, it's hard because I don't want to say like it's not like I'm against like farming or building a hut or dancing the hula. Like I support all of our practices, but it's like as a native Hawaiian, and this some people are asking about Nation of Hawaii, and I'll kind of dovetail towards that. Like Nation of Hawaii, like Lahui or Kalahui o Hawaii that's the word that's like basically means Nation of Hawaii. Another interesting fact I like to bring up, the word that means like nation, the Nation of Hawaii and the Nation of China is very similar. Like in China, it's a Shahui, and in Hawaiian, it's a Lahui, right? And the word hui is actually Hawaiian, Samoan, Maori, Vietnamese, and Chinese word, right? And basically, the word hui, like in Hawaii, people still say hui. Like if you're going to the beach, right, and if somebody's like, "Oh, wait, you're in the wrong spot," because the big waves over there, and you're going to the area where like hui, come this way, right? It just kind of means like come here, right? But it also means like when you hui together, like a hui can be a canoe paddling team or like it's people coming together and working on a project, right? So like um Hui o Waimanalo, or like is it one of the projects I think they were doing a plant Hui o Kalihi is people of Kalihi coming together to like plant an indigenous like Hawaiian led food garden, right, to provide food sovereignty among other things, right? Or a hui could also be a political hui, like this is where the Chinese Hawaiian history actually gets interesting, right? Because Sun Yat-sen, who is the forerunner of revolution in China, he's acknowledged all across China. Like, Xi Jinping is regularly seen every year, like at a big memorial function for him, and also the ROC, which is one China, but there's some differing opinions like on within all of China, which is one China.
Yeah.
But they all acknowledge Sun Yat-sen as the forerunner, right, of the revolution. And Sun Yat-sen, like he organized the Sing Chung Hui from Hawaii, and the Sing Chung Hui. There's also the Tong Ming Hui, but these were it means like revive China society, right, from the imperial colonial at that time more colonial shackles that had been imposed upon it, right? And the Hui in that sentence, right, in that name, right, it means us, all of us, like Chinese people, but also supporters, which included Kalakaua, which included Emma, I know Manapua is in the stream also. Shout out to our Hawaiian relative that's now streaming. These are not just the Hawaiian leaders, right, but also all the Hawaiian people, right, that accepted the Chinese people in their time of extreme hardship and humiliation after the Opium Wars, right, that had recently happened. And there's already the British and the colonizers were coming in and causing planetary suffering, and the Chinese were included. And so the Hawaiians had accepted as a whole those people, and the Hui, right? included, right, people coming together and working not for profit, right, not with one white man with a bunch of slaves farming pineapples like Dole plantation, or the sugar plantations, or Alexander and Baldwin, which is related to Alec Baldwin. Actually, he's in the same fucking family of
Of
people
course he
that
is.
came there. Yeah, or came to Hawaii, right, and took and other islands and took land and had oppressed, racialized labor, right? And many Confederate cotton slave plantation farmers came to Hawaii to try to replicate their southern system after Civil War, among other things. But basically, so the Hui is basically it was the way of organizing the way of organizing work of any kind, whether that was political work. Like Sing Hui was and the Tongaming Hui were organizing Hawaiian Chinese and a variety, especially wealth and the amount that had been able to develop in Hawaii to send it back, right, to fund and to supply arms to begin the revolutionary undoing of the problems within China, right? That they fund. There's also branches in Japan and all around the diaspora, as China was so subjugated, and they're actually investigated by the Chinese. The Qing dynasty actually investigated in Hawaii to try to stop it at one point. It's actually on the same island that one of the first the operations was. The meetings were on this island where I am right now. Anyway, but the working together, right? Without a boss, without a landlord, without a feudal Euro king taking one third of everything to spend on needless wars, right? And all that kind of that way of organizing just the society of life is so connected from throughout the Asia Pacific region, right? Now it's not that's a big place. That's 60% of the earth, and like we have complicated histories, but like Pacific Islanders, Maori, Hawaiian, I was talking to my friend from Saipan, Ocean Lani, North Marianas area, also under U.S. colonial occupation, and then also in the Vietnam, China, all this area, we have language, we have shared language, especially the Austronesians in the Pacific, but even all the way into Asia, we have shared language, and importantly, we have shared culture, ways of organizing society, politics, and all that. That it predates, I mean, there's obviously Marxist, Leninist areas deep in obviously the Chinese government, all throughout this region as well. But this predates like Marx himself, right? This was the ways of organizing things that was updated and advanced in the era of 1800s in Hawaii. And then obviously in the 20th century with the Mao, the Communist Party, there's in that long sequence of of trying to push back against capitalism, imperialism, etc. But anyway, so I just wanted to say like that's like that is part of the history, right? That's like people. So coming back to calling us like you and me propaganda or authoritarian, or
Campist or
I'll listen
whatever,
to you
yeah.
about your I'll listen to you about Hawaii and your hula, and like I'll listen to you about like farming in like a 10-person Hawaiian commune or something with no electronics, right? Because we all have to be like pre-electronical to be native, or you have to be no technology. This bullshit. It is noble savage mythology crap, right? Um, and they'll say like, I'll listen to you about that, but I will listen to you about China and Hawaii and blah blah blah. And it's like that is your alternate Western like pretend to be left history. That is your ahistoricity. Even Voltaire called it out because
Yeah.
Voltaire was trying to be honest about China, and he got exiled from France, right? They said like Western illusory Christian ahistoriography, like you're anti-historical, like right. It's so you want to pretend like the history isn't. You either want to make up a fake history or you just don't want to look at that, or
Yeah.
you want to be selective about how you look at it. I mean, I'm sorry that your ancestors did 500 years of the vast majority of the bad things. It makes you feel sad, but it's like
And they want to
if you don't
project
have
it
to,
on us, by the way, and pretend like we would do the same thing. Just to
yeah.
not to interrupt you, but just want to point that out while we're there.
Yeah, and I'll just finish up by saying, so it's kind of like but like Hawaiian and Chinese and many other people's history, it's not perfect, but it is intertwined, and like we are, and our history, like Hawaii had world's first universal healthcare, world's first uh, official formal universal healthcare. The United States is actually is in the UN is being pursued for genocide because it tended to defund and destroy our universal healthcare system that we established. It's known, right? So the world's first universal healthcare, world's first highest literacy, one of the highest literacy rate at that time, 98%. Uh, uh, you know socialism. It was socialism with Hawaiian characteristics. We had the high speed, high quality rail, ferries, public transportation, all the things that we're seeing like advanced countries. Like obviously China is one of the biggest ones that is advancing, but it's basically doing the same thing. Which the state controlled for the whatever it can and what it is best at controlling, like utilities, housing, all those things, and definitely controlling the markets to make sure that everyone is being provided electricity, the food, basic infrastructure as best as possible. And then for everything else, right, it was hui or obviously there are corporations for like advanced technology, like there's Xiaomi and there's Huawei and these others, right? But the organization is obviously it's far advanced. There was no quantum computing in Hawaii in 1800s, but the way that the society is organized, right, and it's always evolving, right? So China today is not Hawaii in the 1800s, but it's so similar to me when I look at it. And like we were leading at technology. We had a renewable hydropowered cities with waterfall spun turbines lighting the entire city. Like China is building like the vast majority of the world's renewable and is lighting. It's this year it's going to have more electrics than gas powered cars sold, right? And the West like cannot compute that, or they don't want to compute that.
Yeah.
They don't want to think about that.
They don't want to.
Anyway, I'll just stop talking about that because I can go on that forever.
Yeah, no. Well, actually, I was gonna say like it's interesting you mentioned that because I was gonna say like related to that. First of all, 100% agree. Like, of course, when it comes to China, Vietnam, DPRK, like, yeah, they have influence from Marxism, Leninism, of course, and that they studied Marxism, Leninism, and stuff. But a lot of people don't realize that as influential in their politics, like you say, is a tradition that goes back long before Marx and Engels existed. Like Juche comes out of Marxism, Leninism, and Kim Il Sung's father's idea called aim high. And then that has a basis even more in like Korean collectivist organization before that. So like Marx and Engels sort of confirm like a worldview that already existed, that they were already aware of, just somewhat like updated for a modern time, which they contextualize for their own particular historical conditions. And then the other thing I like to point out with people is, Marx and Engels themselves, like the way they came up with democratic centralism, for example, was looking at Haudenosaunee nations, what Engels called Iroquois, which is, a French distortion of Haudenosaunee nations. It's like just a settler word that they gave them. But Haudenosaunee nations organizations is what gave them the idea of democratic centralism, because they looked and said, this is the way Haudenosaunee nations organize without classes. They do this democratic centralism where they have democracy and discussion and then unity and action where everybody agrees on the thing and they go forward and do it, right? So like they were again inspired by old teachings, like in much the same way. Like it wasn't that was coming out of Europe. They were learning that from looking at indigenous cultures and indigenous practices, right? So I think like again in a similar way, that's why a lot of First Nations are able to understand, like not only just understand those revolutionary materials first, even without reading them, but also understand the need to stand in solidarity with other anti-imperialist projects like China or Korea or whatever it is, right? Or standing with Palestine long before. I guess it's nice that a bunch of liberals now are more on the right side, but at the same time, I do warn people that I feel like when Palestine does win its liberation and they build up the means to defend themselves from future invasion and future settler colonies trying to come in, what you will see is a whole bunch of the anarchists that support them today, a whole bunch of the Western Marxists that support them today, that support will all of a sudden dry up. If they have to develop nukes to defend themselves, or if they build up a strong state to be able to defend themselves, we'll have so many Marxists in the West who will say, well, they're too authoritarian, I can't support them. Just look at Korea, look at Cuba, look at all of these places today. That's why it's such a
Yeah, exactly.
breath of fresh air to just come into your streams and hear you talk, and why I'm constantly telling people to go watch SilverSpook at night because it's like there's not enough anti-imperialist voices on Twitch. I feel like most of the left on here, it feels like they want to just bash on the right. They want to just bash on the chuds because it's the easy target, you know, like Charlie Kirk and all these Elon Musk and Trump and all these fuckers because they're super easy to dunk on. And but everybody knows that they're against us because they tell us that. It's the liberals, it's the social democrats that are our real obstacle, you know? And the Western Marxists.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely, I see you fighting the good fight against those Western Marxists on the social medias,
It's
and
rough.
it's important. It's rough. I know it sucks. I was like, I was me and Holly were like, oh man, we wouldn't go that long, but you know, Larry is fighting the gauntlet for the revolution. So thank you for your service, comrade and cousin. But yeah, like I totally get what you're saying though. Like it's like like that. That's basically what I will say, right? Which is like it's like sometimes I just want to scream because I'm just like people coming to say SilverSpook, if you just vote a Democrat instead of Republican, this would all be fixed in Hawaii. We just had some asshole come in and be like, you know, the right doesn't play fair. I think it was his handle or something nonsense. Or it's like we got to stop these right wingers from being right wingy in your Hawaii, you know. And Hawaii represents, you know, we could really use Hawaii. They said like, you know, the U.S. military is so diverse. SilverSpook, why don't you like the U.S. military?
Oh my god.
It's so diverse though. Dwayne the Rock Johnson is an ally. And I was like, but he's recruiting for the U.S. motherfucking military. What the? I mean, just like I can't, you know. Uh,
Yeah. But
so,
this is why we can't shy away, I think, from talking about liberals and the Democrats and the social democrats because the, I think the default position for Western Marxists is to just think that we should use the Democratic Party somehow to bring about progress. And my point is, you know, every time the Democrats or the liberals here are in is when revolutionary enthusiasm is at its lowest point. Because all of the white, all of the settlers, and like all of them just feel safe and like they've saved democracy from fascism for another 4 years. So now they can stay home. It's like almost every single time when we get, and I'm not saying like I want to see conservatives win, but I'm just saying that I notice every time liberals win, every time NDP wins here, a bunch of the people who were coming out, you know, to protest one day, they just stay home after that. And you won't see them again for
yeah,
4 fucking years.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's basically that's been my thing, you know. And like, and the reason why I'm like when people, I just like I'm like I don't know, should I scream, laugh, or just dismiss this person when they say like, you know, Hawaii stop voted Republican? Like Hawaii literally has had, and I mean, I bring it out. There's like a wall, a literal wall of blue, right? State senators, representatives, federal state senators, representatives, governor, mayor, every single thing is blue, blue, blue. Blue is Hawaii is bluer, more Democrat than California and New York, by like a factor of at least two. It's like nonsense. It just right. It's Hawaii is it's like, you know, speaking of DPRK, we and the Koreans, we have a lot in common, right? We're completely fraudulent, non-democratic military occupation. Like Hawaii, it doesn't have a government; it has a military occupation. The U.S. military, like Korea, South Korea, is just a instrument. It's not a government. It's just a fucking instrument of the United States. U.S. says U.S. almost got all of South Korea to be a giant cannon fodder tsunami against North Korea and China this past 2 weeks with the freaking the UN declared the U.S. and Blinken were all basically like declare
Oh,
martial law, send all the K-pop bands to get themselves killed, you know, because we don't give a shit about any of that shit.
the
And
details
you
of
all
that
know
are
that,
wild. Wild.
right? Yeah, I remember it was like they actually had some. They were trying to get soldiers to like start a little false flag or start a fight at the border to drag the whole country into Korea War II, which the last time it killed 2 million. I mean, it's you know, oh, like in Hawaii, like that's like say, you know, telling a Hawaiian, oh, why don't you just vote Democratic? That's like telling a South Korean, why don't you vote for Joe Biden? South Korea has to do whatever Joe Biden's puppeteers tell him to do because the monetary capitalist imperialist elite, the Davos crowd, fucking tells South Korea to do through the Joe Biden and the entire U.S. infrastructure. But
Yeah.
it's not. There's the voting is pointless. What the fuck? That's why like a lot of Hawaiians don't vote at all, because like whatever we do, you're going to build another military base and poison more of our water like you did at Red Hill. And you're going to steal more native land and take all of our children and incarcerate us at 4 times the rate of white people. And you're going to do all the crap. You're just going to keep installing more Mark Zuckerbergs to fucking farm Wagyu beef fed by fucking overwater using macadamia nuts, buying up our reservoirs. Like, right? So it's like it doesn't matter. Like you said, like what if we in Hawaii, it doesn't even, it really, there's some like local stuff that happens at a very small level, but at the state level, at the federal level, this is, it's wall to wall Democrats. That's why I said if you vote a Democrat, the Democrats are the ones that have been hurting Hawaii for the entire illegal, illegitimate U.S. colonial capitalist occupation, right? And that's why somebody asked about Nation of Hawaii. That's why like Nation of Hawaii, is like as I said, there's really only two parties in any country, right? There's the imperial U.S. led, capitalist hyperpower backside, right? And that's the illegitimate side, right? If the U.S. isn't saying you're authoritarian, your country is illegitimate government, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the actual democratic side, right? That is delegitimized, called authoritarian, or called like some rebel terrorist group, right? Like in Yemen, it's the Houthis, right?
Yeah.
Or it's actually Ansar Allah, right?
Yeah.
But like
Ansar
they are
Allah being
legitimate.
as I point out all the time, they're basically the de facto government. The only reason there's even a question or a debate about that is because of Saudi intervention in the north.
Yeah, exactly, right. So in Yemen, it's in Venezuela, it's like this is why you can't just go by the simplistic, I mean, certain kinds of like definitely Western anarchistic lines is that if you're small, you're good, and if you're a big evil, if you're big state, then you're evil and bad, right? Because sometimes the U.S. backed side is a state like Canada or Britain or France or Germany, right? And sometimes the U.S. or South Korea or Japan. Sometimes the U.S. backside is smaller, like the opposition, our good, amazing man of magic, Juan Guaido, who can appear in Venezuela and suddenly is president, right? Because U.S. leaders just like declare him. It's like that joke in what is that show? The Office, where they say, "I declare bankruptcy," and you can just like make it happen. Like, no,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can't just make it happen. But
Or
in the
Julani, the
imperial,
guy who named himself after the Golani Heights there in Syria.
yeah. And right, and so those guys, they're not the state actor, right? They're trying to usurp, right? In Venezuela's case, the Maduro government. That he just had. I was talking about yesterday. They had a literal, they call like 7 U.S. and Ukrainian special forces trying to literally assassinate him, and we know that they have. There's like video of them U.S. backed forces flying drones at him, almost blowing him up. I mean, we know how many times they tried to assassinate Castro. So sometimes the U.S. backside is smaller. It's a non-state entity, or they call it non-state actors. The U.S. sucks at state-to-state war. They lost in Ukraine, so now it's all going to be non-state actors now. So that's why it's all trying to blow up Maduro or snipe him with the the losers in Ukraine. The losers in Ukraine, they go to Syria and with the HTS and this whole.
Yeah.
Speaking
Or
of
Georgia.
yeah,
They
yeah,
tried Georgia.
Georgia, right? Yeah, Georgia. Sometimes there's blowback inside the United States. You have attacks. These are the most recent New Year's Eve attacks were U.S. military trained. And so anyway, so what it's so in Hawaii. So yeah, coming back to Hawaii, right? It's like the U.S. backside is the state of Hawaii, right? And the like nation of Hawaii. Now, obviously, like it's not um like legally under international law, right? The UN even acknowledges like the UN High Commissioner on Human Rights, Alfred Zayas, like you said, like this is illegal. Hawaii is a illegal U.S. occupation, fraudulent annexation, never even ratified in Congress. All of that is illegitimate. This is just everything about the United States in Hawaii. It's not it has no basis in international law. It's kind of like what the U.S. and Israel is doing in Palestine. Also, it's completely illegitimate, but the U.S. is just forcing it through for the capitalist imperialist that they work for. And so, but yeah, so in Nation of Hawaii, I sometimes it's kind of like on Surah Allah, but way less of way less concrete economic, political, etc. Power in the world. Like it's or it's like and so like and that makes it hard because of course, like, people say, well, Hawaii is a state, you got to just give up, and it's like, well, I mean, like, it's like if the United States tomorrow turned out and it was like, oh my gosh, it's I don't know what that would even look like. But if the United States actually gave human rights, was not a capitalist, horrible colonial power, whatever they called it, like if they were not completely mistreating and using us as an imperial base to blow up Vietnam, train and stage all these horrible wars in some imaginary world, the U.S., whatever that entity is, became a just place, you know, like, because people say, well, you don't want to get taken over by China and Russia, though, because then, that'll be worse than being taken over by the United States. And I'll be like, I would love to be, being an autonomous region of China seems to work out really well for the Uyghurs, who actually have all their statistics have gone up, have more of their population, they're wealthier. All of us Hawaiians are poor, we're disappearing, right? So that's why that really pisses me off, because I'm like, I mean, the Chinese just have never said they don't have 800 military bases across the planet trying to invade every single person, right?
Yeah. We know they wouldn't want to take over, but if they did, I mean, we look at the way they treat their ethnic groups, and I'm like, yeah, that would be all right.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, and like the thing is, like, and then them and Russia, I like to bring that up. But you don't want to be taken over by Russia. But the thing is, like, this is like, I know some people, big deal. I know this, and they were right. You probably heard me say this, but people bring up, like, some Western left will at least say, oh, there was a very horrible thing. Even liberals, it was horrible in 1890s. The United States, couped Hawaii, overthrew its government, and there's annexation, and maybe that was we made a bad boo boo, right? And that's very sad, and that's bad, right? And then the thing is, like, that annexation, right, in the eastern regions of Ukraine, that whole area, that the Donbass area, that's 90% Russian. I want to watch what's happened there, like with the Uyghurs and with the Uyghurs in China, the Eastern Russian-speaking peoples of Ukraine, and Hawaii, right? In the 1890s, it's a very similar situation, and in the Russian situation, right, in the Eastern Ukraine situation, right, the Russians gave. Now you could say, well, it was illegitimate. The vote, they were pressured. It was a fraudulent vote. We know in Hawaii that 95% of Hawaiians, right? The United States didn't ask us if we wanted to become a part of the United States. The United States forcefully annexed us at gunpoint with the USS Boston pointing at our capital, threatening to, like, kill our leaders and thousands of us, right? The United States didn't say, Hawaiians, here is a ballot. Would you like to be annexed, right? We had to get our own ballots. The Kool-Aid petitions, we voted 95% we did not want to join the United States. The United States forcefully annexed us anyway. In the eastern region of Ukraine, Russia gave a ballot, right? And they said, would you like to join Russia as a political entity? And there's good reason why. In both cases, everything in Hawaii went downhill after we lost our universal healthcare, our high quality of life, our self-determination, our literacy rates plummeted. We were ghettoized. Became pineapple dole slave plantations, and we're doing fake plastic hula today for poverty wages, and we have the worst statistics of any ethnic of any ethnic minority in the United States today. Right? There's a good reason why we said no to joining the United States. In Ukraine, the Russian-speaking populations, they were suffering. Tens of thousands of people were being killed by by these literal fascists that were blowing them up. They were banning Russian language in 90% Russian-speaking populations. Exactly what the U.S. did to us as Hawaiians. They banned Hawaiian language.
Yeah.
Just as U.S.-backed Ukraine was banning their language and then killing them, like literally just bombing them.
And being very explicit, like we have division leaders, army leaders of the Ukraine military saying your Russian-speaking children will be cowering in basements while our kids go to school. Like, that, very open about what their intentions were. And something I try and point out to people too is, like, I don't want to see a war in Ukraine any more than anybody else. Love to see a diplomatic end, which Russia did offer even before their special military operation began. They offered diplomatic solution to the problem. But if we want to be realistic, not only is it NATO starting this conflict today, but it really goes back to US, CIO, and the other unions in the US working to dismantle the USSR. And the main thing that they used to break Ukraine away from USSR was, of course, anti-Russian fascism. Because that is the force that opposed Soviet U.S. Soviet Union, right? Because actually, the Soviet Union in Ukraine had mass support. Most people wanted to keep A in the Soviet Union. And B, they wanted to keep the socialist system even if they were going to lose membership in the Soviet Union. They wanted to at least then keep socialism. And that's why they had to do things like abolish the parliament and like illegally dissolve communist parties and like because it was a very unpopular thing that was forced ahead in the interests of Westerns. And what you see in Ukraine today is the fruits of that, essentially.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's and if anti-communism and anti-indigeneity, or like certainly like our Hawaiian cultural economic structures, right, which is very similar, right? The United States, in many ways, they did similar things. Not we didn't have a communist party necessarily, but they just one example, the Hawaiian speaking of coups, right? The United States plotted with William Hall was one of the three of the original coup plotters, like the largest percentage of the original U.S. backed overthrow of the sovereign country of Hawaii. William Hall he became the Hawaiian Electric Company head after the overthrow. And he joined like the white they were the white Hawaii Riflemen League. It was a white, right wing, whites only right wing, armed militia. Right. It wasn't exactly the fascism of what the scale and at the kind, but it's a similar sort of force that was like they wanted to make a lot of money. They were upset that Hawaiians and Chinese and Africans also in Hawaii built the Lahaina area. That school that was burned down was built by a freed African slave who helped us and also prospered in Hawaii with us. There are many famous ones, right? And so the whites and capitalists, they were upset, and they were supported by the United States. They became armed, and one of those original armed white right wingers he would go on after the overthrow, backed by William McKinley and the U.S. military, to become the Hawaiian Electric Company's before the overthrow. There was nationalized, subsidized electricity that was basically provided at almost no cost or very, very cheaply, the way modern socialist and communist parties and countries do today, right? But Hawaii was doing this in the 1800s when it was like unheard of, basically in most of the world. And so they were really upset that why can't we make money, right, with this selling privatized electricity, right? Why is the Hawaiian government giving away free electricity, like lighting all these lights and doing all these things? We need to nationalize all this. So he became the one of the overthrowers was put in place as one of the private. It was also prior to the overthrow, it was hydropowered renewable waterfall spun electricity. After the overthrow, they basically dismantled, deactivated all the hydropower, and they installed fossil fuel, a dirty privatized electricity after that, the Hawaiian Electric Company. And so like that, yeah, so the privatization, which is getting rid of the socialism in Ukraine, moving as much into a private capitalist money making as possible. That was directly a part of that was one of the direct one of the core reasons for the overthrow in Hawaii as well. And like, yeah, so that annexation, it's like it's like clear, like, you know, if you are being killed, if you're being hurt, if your language is being suppressed, right? I'm like I said, my mom was punished for speaking her language. Not just most Hawaiians that spoke their language, they were being punished. So when I heard about that, and I'm like reading what the actual people in the Donbass, Lugansk region were going through, it's obvious why they would want to join, right? And there was an actual vote, and so that's where, like, you can't just take, oh well, now that area is being, right, because the Western liberal imperial narrative is like Russia is like conquering, eating, and some of the Western left narrative or Western Marxist narrative might be like, Russia is imperial because they're stealing this part of Ukraine, blah 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 blah, whatever they're gonna say about that. But it's like if let's say in some situation Hawaii was being shelled and tens of thousands of us were being blown up and killed, it's already really bad, right? But like if we were offered to join, China probably wouldn't do this, but if China said, Hawaii, we will allow you to become, would you like to join as autonomous, a very distant autonomous region, the Okinawan, or what they call the Luchuan or the Ryukyuan kingdom in off the coast of Japan. That's actually another colonized area, and it's where U.S. puts most of its bases, right? They had some connection to the Chinese. I think they had some military agreements with them, right? They were not as integrated as some of the mainland China. But like if Hawaii was to say, well, we will give you some support, at least to remove you from the U.S. military, right? And if Hawaiians voted and we all talked about it, we said it will really help to not be attacked, crushed, or just oppressed by joining this, or for Hawaii joining BRICS at some point, or Hawaii joining SCO, Belt and Road, right? And if we all said we would like to do that, then I think that's something that peoples and nations should be allowed to do. So that's, I mean, I'm speaking to this thing about if you're big in a state, then you're bad and evil, and that's bad, and that's just bad, and you're authoritarian when you have states, right?
Yep.
And it's like, but it matters, like, what is the character of that, whatever that organization is, right? Is it doing what is in the best interest of the people? Is it fulfilling the needs of the people? Were the people asked, and did the people agree to that? Right. And in the case of U.S. annexation of Hawaii, no, it didn't even ask. The annexation wasn't even ratified, partially because the U.S. was so racist, said we don't want brown N-words in the island N-words in our America, right? That's part of what that was. But either way, it's illegitimate. And in the case of the eastern regions of Ukraine and in the Xinjiang Autonomous Region, I mean, it's like that place that's been part of China for a long time. They have had problems, but like the people of the region, the Uyghurs say over, I forget exactly, but it's like 90+% are also approve of the Communist Party of China and their government.
Yeah, and consider themselves to be China. Like themselves, they would say, "Yeah, I'm Uyghur Chinese." Like, that's how they refer to themselves.
Yeah, that's how they refer to themselves. I just saw I see a lot of Uyghurs and Kazakh and Hui people. I just saw like a Hui person from Xinjiang talking to somebody. They commented, they were talking to like a Westerner who said, "Oh, the Hui." They said, "Hi, I'm from Xinjiang. I'm the biggest Muslim minority in Xinjiang." And some like Western liberal was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry for your suffering under Xi Jinping, but it's good to meet a Uyghur, right?" And this guy was like, I'm not a Uyghur. I am a Hui. I'm a member of the Hui ethnic people. These are the right. This and it's like, oh no, the Muslims are the Uyghurs though. They're like, no, there are multiple Muslim ethnic minorities in China and in Xinjiang. We are the largest group. And then the Western left just disappeared. They're like, all I wanted to do was use you to try to balkanize China and have more ETIM terrorists to put to Syria. That's all I really wanted.
I just wanted to tokenize you for my imperialist talking points. I'm sorry, my mistake.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's funny, something you mentioned earlier reminded me of like an exact thing talking about this kind of stuff. An exact response that I got from some Western anarchists was that I was is that if I was doing indigenous content, I would be doing the world a great service. But because I don't do indigenous content, I guess, then I'm not. I'm just out here doing indigenous Knots Bowl content, is what they refer to it as. And I'm like, what kind of content? I thought like any content I'm doing on here, whether I'm playing games or talking, is that content,
Yeah, it's like yeah, that's did my camera disappear?
Yeah, your camera's gone. We can still hear you though.
Let me try and turn it back
There
on.
you go. You're back.
Back? Okay. That was so Western cringe that it destroyed my camera. Sorry, camera.
Your camera was like, "Oh no, fuck this."
Fuck this. I'm out. Yeah, that's like, it's so like yeah, it's really frustrating because I think a lot of it, somebody pointed out, I forget, it's somebody on Twitter said something that it's basically what it is, right? It's like it sucks and it's embarrassing, and some people, like, you're if you are a white middle class American or Canadian, you kind of have some vested interest in, right, covering up a lot of that history and the present reality, right? Also give them a story. Like, don't listen to that indigenous Nazbo authoritarian Stalinite or whatever they're going to say. You listen to indigenous people when you dance when you go to the powwow or you go to the hula and you dance in the way that it was done like 500 years ago, and only that. If you do anything other than that, if you use a phone, you're not indigenous anymore. Get on Twitch and you stream, lose your Hawaiian card from the white owned, the white liberal owned Hawaiian validation society that validates your indigeneity for you. I gotta
Yeah.
get my
Oh, you gotta ask the anarchist before you begin your stream. Here, this is my itinerary for today. Can you please tell me if this is indigenous enough for me to be doing a great service here on Twitch, or, like what the. It's so funny to me because, like you were saying before about how, like, Marx and Engels, like, they have these revolutionary ideas, but also those similar ideas existed before. And like I was saying about, like, democratic centralism being based on a tradition in Haudenosaunee, it's like, well, us talking about Marx and Lenin and Engels and defending Stalin and all this shit, that is indigenous. That is indigenous because that's fighting against settler colonialism, it's fighting against traditional colonialism, neo-colonialism, imperialism. What the hell is more indigenous than that? Like, I can't think of much. Like, that is the core of it, because indigeneity, wouldn't exist if it wasn't for settlerism, right? Like, if it wasn't for settlerism, it would just be Mi'kmaq, or Mohawk or Haudenosaunee. It wouldn't be indigenous. The reason why indigenous exists as a category is because settler colonizers exist as a category. So, what is more indigenous than resistance and revolution?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've heard. I think yeah, somebody brought up Red Nation. I heard Nick SS say exactly that, and that is also that's my exactly what you said. I take as well, which is that, like, like, I would love to just be Kanaka Maoli, Native Hawaiian Pacifica person, right? But now we have a settler colonial, we're colonial British and French in Hawaii, and now we have a settler colonial and imperial U.S. in Hawaii. So now we're indigenous. It's kind of like, it's not necessarily like a punishment, but it's kind of like, it was like, I think it was the 1600s. Like, when I looked it up, it was like Thomas Brown was a British officer that was one of the first to comment using the word indigenous in that way, where he said, like, the Africans, they used the N word obviously, but the Africans that we brought to the Americas are not indigenous to the land. And that he was on a boat moving Africans around, right? And so it's like, yeah, it was used by colonizers. It exists under through the colonial system, right? And a system in which certain people and nations and countries are viewed as above others and deserve to have and exploit those other people, right? So if we had a world in which, a lot of people are talking about that, and, like, that's also my view. Even some, like, non-indigenous commentators are talking about, like, the world before 1492 is now returning through BRICS, the Belt and Road, and the rising multipolar world, right? The multipolar world is just the Silk Road world, right? It's in many ways, right? It's like, and the indigenous trading networks in all of the North Central South America, or Turtle Island, or Abya Yala, depending on what nation you're from, right? That like what is happening is it's the need for the word indigenous may soon fall by the wayside. Not immediately, but over time, right? Because, right, yeah, what if it was 1392, and you were, if you were, a Blackfoot talking to, somebody of, I don't know, Lakota heritage, you wouldn't say, oh, who the indigenous Lakota, or the indigenous, I wouldn't say the indigenous Kanaka Maoli. We would talk to our neighbors, right? If Hawaiians, like, we visited North, Central, and South America, the Pacific Islanders, despite colonizers trying to erase our wayfinding and our travel, if we Hawaiians, we went to, right, the West Coast, or we visited the Yaqui in what is now Bolivia, right? We wouldn't say, oh, you indigenous Yaqui people. We would just say our cousins. We just you of the Yaqui nation, right? We just, right. It's the indigeneity is, yeah. So it's definitely part of that, and that's what's starting to unravel. But it's almost like the West, like, part of that, like, you have to do your indigenous stuff the way that I say. You have to do indigenous. Somebody came in my stream and said you should really do. My friend Conquest Dread, he's a native Maori person from Aotearoa. They said, do more indigenous shit. Stop doing this gaming and tattoo stuff and talk about technology. Do indigenous stuff. Like, they said that. People have said that to me too. And it's like, it's almost like that attitude is like, they want to cling onto the 1492 to like 2020s like paradigm, like stay in your box. Like it's like I compare it to like when they tell African nations, right, stay underdeveloped, right? When they say stay indigenous the way white people defined it in 1950, it's like stay underdeveloped so we can keep stealing all your lithium and your cobalt and your copper and everything else, right? And obviously that don't fly in the AES in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger nowadays. Shout out to them.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, my point too was like, hey, if an indigenous person is on Twitch streaming Mario Brothers, they're making indigenous content. Like, I'm sorry to tell you, but that's what they're doing because they're an indigenous streamer. You know, that is what that is. So who are you to tell? Like, that's not indigenous enough. Like, oh, okay. Do we need a mod Mario to have a feather in his hat? Would that help you? Like, what the fuck do you want? Like, like it's just the most egregious like racist shit ever. You know?
Yeah,
Do you,
yeah, exactly. No, it's Dorian Sabers. Conquest of Dread didn't say that. Somebody came into Conquest of Dread stream and said, "Stop playing these games or whatever he was doing. Do indigenous shit, which means like uh, talking about whale riding or some bullshit, right? Like, and it's not that whale riding is bullshit, but just like only indigenate is only when you practice this particular thing. Or SilverSpook, you got to do hula, otherwise you're not Native Hawaiian anymore. Not nonsense. Like some people some people will come out straight up and say that. They'll be like, "I don't believe you're Native Hawaiian. Let me see your Native Hawaiian card. Where's your grass hut? What iPhone? You're not Native Hawaiian or something. I don't use the iPhone. Why would I use genocidal products?" But also like, but I like what I like to say to that, right? People they often say, "Well, you should just be happy America helped you in Hawaii because you'd all be living in mud huts, no electricity. But we had electricity before you, where we had the right the president was pooping in a freaking outhouse when we had indoor flush toilets.
I mean,
Like,
I mean,
one day I want to make a game.
the native people in so-called North America and Turtle Island literally had to teach white people to bathe so they would stop dying from fucking diseases of filth.
Yeah, exactly. And like, yeah, that was one of the things, right? It's like health stuff. It was like we had like we had universal health care, part because they kept bringing smallpox, intentionally trying to. And it's like and like, yeah, it's also modern technology. Like the best phones in the world are just demonstrably like Huawei. The best cars are Chinese. I'm sorry, even Ford. The Ford I played that Ford Yo is over there. The great America's industrial flagship Ford is over there. I'm sure Henry Ford is crying in his grave, or in hell where he deserves to be, right? Uh, Over, right. It's the Chinese cars are just completely blowing away all their cars. So like, and the Chinese people are 56 indigenous people to that country. They just have ability to use their resources, right? And they practice whatever culture they want. And sometimes they dress up in their traditional culture. I mean, I have a Hawaiian flag here. I mean, but like like some Europeans don't. You don't stop being European if you don't walk around in a full suit of armor all day. That's the comparison I like to make, right? If you don't, if an American isn't walking around in a cowboy hat with a Twinkie in his mouth all day, he doesn't stop being an American. I mean, not that America is a real thing. I mean, the U.S. American is not a real thing, but right. But it's like, but yeah. So yeah, it's so like, yeah, defining indigeneity, or defining like those peoples who are indigenous, like our us Native Hawaiians, Kanaka Maoli, and your people, as being like, when you are at this level of technology or do this in this way, right? It's exclusively for places that settler colonialists, capitalists, imperialists want to exploit, right?
Yeah.
Like North, Central, South America, and the Pacific, especially, right? You're the good indigenous, right? It's basically, if the U.S. is saying you're good, right? And the West is saying you're good, then you're probably on the wrong side. I'm not saying that every indigenous person that like goes to does certain things for at universities, or what you got to do, what you got to do to survive. But like, if the U.S., if they're not at least saying there's a problem with you, you are authoritarian, or calling you if you're called a Nazbol by some shitty people, by some at least you're on the right track. If you're really good friends with really problematic liberal white people, I feel like as an indigenous person, I mean, like, it's not necessarily like I'm not saying that you're like a bad person, but like maybe you should like maybe like interrogate like maybe like talk to some other indigenous people, or various kinds, and maybe like interrogate the circles, that you are around, and like, because we don't want to, if we enable, because I have family members that like work for military. It hurts me so much to think about it, but they work for the military, work for U.S. government. Like my parents, right? They work for the Catholic Church, right? And they're like, "Oh, America's not that bad." And it's like, I'm not saying America is Satan. I mean, well, kind of literally is the great Satan, but
That's where I'm at. Yeah.
It's all for one motherfucker.
but like
and one
it's like,
motherfucker
not
for
all every
motherfuckers
single American
everywhere,
person
you know
is
what I'm
evil, but it's
saying?
like look at the history though. Like you don't even have, like, my parents don't even have they don't even have like access to like kind of not the true historical and economic and political knowledge of the world, not just the little things that the West wants to give you. Even make that, you can't even make that you can't come to that conclusion because you're not educated on what America is, right?
Yeah.
And that's like and anyway, yeah, that's I'm talking to the choir here, so yeah.
I mean, that's what we do around here anyway. But I think that's good because it gives comrades, a lot of comrades. I think they don't quite know exactly like what we should do, and I think that's why it is important, like I say, to talk about, these situations like anti-imperialism and stuff like that. And like the thing about putting us into a box like that is like a way to otherize us and divide us. Like young Ungrade here in my chat also says DPRK people also have to quote unquote act a certain way, i.e. you aren't a real Korean if you like some kind of foreign media or hobby. They like to keep people under fire in a box. Absolutely. Non-white
Yeah,
people are
exactly.
supposed to perform for white people a certain way. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, shout out to our Korean. If you are Korean, I mean, like, either side of it. Unfortunately, you're in the fight. It's very dangerous right now. Yeah, totally. I mean, in Hawaii, one thing I noticed in of our Korean, like I lived around a lot of Koreans. I was in the Chinatown of Hawaii. That's the area that's it's not just Chinese. It was Hawaii. There's Hawaiians. There's Chinese, Vietnamese, like African people, like I already said, who were freed from slavery and lived in this area and helped develop a lot of Oahu, where I'm from, and there's Koreans also, and Korean, like the laundromat we used to always go to was Korean. I'm pretty sure it was Korean run in the Nuuanu Valley. And Matapua is here. I don't know if they know exactly where Matapua is, another native Hawaiian. But in that area, like the Koreans, um um like one of the this is there's Koreans in Hawaii, but the Koreans in South Korea as well. There's a lot of spam based comfort food. Like in Hawaii, there's spam musubi, spam plate. Spam is used a lot, but and not that I'm saying that spam is like bad, but like that's part of, like, the U.S. brought tons of this canned good in particular in, and so a lot of that cuisine, or a lot of the food that it was eaten, that's what we had access to, right? There's spam, like Vienna sausage, and I know like a lot of Korean food uses a lot of cheese. I know as well, right? But just there's a lot of things that are kind of unusual, that was kind of things that were brought in by uh, the U.S. military, and like we both have to deal with a lot of it's all kind of colonial brainworms. Like in my family, it's hard because there's so much, in particular for like the unsinkable aircraft carriers that are like key military strategic choke points. Like obviously Ukraine is a big one, Taiwan, South Korea, Hawaii, all the Pacific Islands, right? So there's so much like brainwashing, and it's kind of like, a lot of things that my dad will talk about. Oh yeah, it was so great growing up in the tenement camp in the Japanese. I mean, it was basically like an Asian, it's not a concentration camp, but it was a ghetto. It was a ghetto, and like I love the area that I'm from, the Kalihi Palama area, which is it's extremely poor, but it has a rich history there. And but it's also like, but dad, like that was, you know, that like your Japanese mom and your Hawaiian, part Hawaiian, etc. Dad, they're growing up in the ghetto because the United States put them there, and it's like, but he kind of like he has this weird like. Like it's all been restructured in his own head by the United States. Like he went to college in the West Coast. He hangs out with university professors at University of Hawaii. That's a colonial university, right? Developed Agent freaking Orange there,
Yeah.
among other things, right? It's a horrible, but so he kind of like has this like warped vision of his own childhood. And I talked to him, and I was like, oh yeah, it was so great to grow up here. And like, it's not bad to grow up in Hawaii, but it's like the reason why you were living at that same level of poverty, and you're Asian, you're Japanese and mixed mom, and you're Hawaiian and mixed dad that suffered like living like less than dollar a day in shanties, right? And some of the family members went into concentration camps in World War II, and all of that, and that's part of why it's just like the terror. So Chinatowns are just places where Asian and Pacific Islanders just like try to survive, right? A permanently certainly anti-China. It's never been anti-China in the West ever, right? It's anti-China Day every day. It's Yellow Peril Day every day. But an anti-Asian, just to survive, it was about keeping your head down. But my dad, like, I think, and like, but he went to like school in the '60s, and he went to these Western universities, and it's like, yeah, there's so much of that, there's so much of that, like trying to figure out which part, like who is like a colonizer put this worm in there that is what you are. It's really hard to disentangle. In Hawaii, it's really hard to disentangle. Like in Taiwan, it's hard to disentangle. The U.S. is making it a little bit easier to disentangle because it's being so horrible, but
Yeah.
it's still like a lot. It's a lot of work here, and they,
Trump almost
if they
plays
would
like a
love to
role
use,
in that. I feel like with the way he, pulls just the mask off and is just very blatant about things that he says, But I mean, I relate
yeah,
so much to the internalized colonialism thing. I mean, I see people in chat here saying, like a lot of Korean people in the U.S. see the U.S. as protecting South Korea, and I mean, like here, I mean, I've read letters from relatives of mine who have written about how they've voluntarily went to the residential school system, and so therefore they don't see themselves as a victim because they chose to go to that school. They called it a college at the time, and despite all of, like, even seeing horrific abuses happen like directly, they still won't admit that, like, it was abusive situation for them too, despite them quote unquote voluntarily calling up the Indian Bureau's affair guy and having him bring them there, like somehow that puts the blame on them instead of, the system that, and I mean that's just it. Or like, I know people who were say like, well, colonization is mostly over now, what we have is just the results of modernization, and so we want to live in a more modernized way. You don't want to go backwards. And me just trying to explain to people, like, it's not about going backwards, it's about going forward so that we can have sovereignty,
yeah, exactly, right. It's like we want to, yeah, we want to, when it comes down to it, it's like we want to have sovereignty. We want to have all the things that even the U.S. claims that it's going to provide: human rights, equality, chance to live a better life, all these kinds of things, right? We want, if all those things were fulfilled, and we're able to speak whatever language we would like to speak, and a lot of people are bilingual in the world. Like China is Mandarin, a universal language, and then there was like individual, the ethnic regions and different regions had their own language of that region, right? And that's just like, right, it's not, so people say like, oh, I've heard of, like, there's some Europeans that say, but if you're in Germany you have to speak German, so it's okay when we punish people for speaking a language from Africa or a Muslim world, right? And it's like it's missing the point, right? It's kind of like, if people speak German in Germany, that's fine. Or if people speak English in North America, let them speak that, right? But it's like, it's the punishing people for practicing a particular language and culture, right? That is the under the justification, you're in the U.S., you speak English now, right? Or you're in Germany, you speak the German now. No, none of this, African, no Swahili or what the hell, and just like there's a colonialism is baked in there, right? It's like the languages should be equal. Languages are languages, and like languages should be appreciated, right? That's one thing that early on we knew about the Asians and particularly the Chinese, right? It was like when the Chinese came, right? The Chinese didn't go, your language is a lesser Hawaiian language, the Kanaka Maoli language. This is not superintendents in the state of Hawaii, the fake state of Hawaii, say today, Hawaiian language is not useful. English is the language of power. No children in Hawaii should learn Hawaiian. That's like the superintendents of Hawaii schools right now, today, 2025. That is the not the Republic, Democrat-led schools, right?
Yeah.
But the attitude is colonial, right? The attitude is supremacist. The attitude is, it's U.S., it's EU, it's Israeli, it's that attitude where we whatever you are, it doesn't deserve to exist. Your language, your culture, right? But the Chinese came, and the Chinese were like, "Oh, you speak Hawaiian? It's a different language." Um, Difference is a value, right? Like people having different cultures and languages is a benefit because then we have a more beautiful world. We have more to what we can visit you and you can visit us, right? Like in Golden Week in China,
Yeah.
right? Like like historically and today, right? But the West sees you, oh, you're different from us. Your language is different. You speak this. That's bad. We have to replace that with our language. You have to replace your culture with Christianity, colonial, missing civilizatrice, right? It's just like and it's like unspoken. It's just like in the it's like what's in everything, right? It's in the mindset. It's in the first instincts, and it's like now of course when I say that to a lot of Westerners, they'll just be like that they'll just basically be in denial. They just first book I won't listen to you talk about 1800s Hawaii if it involves China because when Chinese happens, if it's an airport and it's nice, it's Japanese. But if you say it's Chinese, it suddenly becomes evil and bad. And if it's 1800s Hawaiian history, I want to do a test. I'm like, the Japanese came to Hawaii in 1800s and they really coexisted. And I wonder how Americans would react to that.
Yeah,
And
no.
if I say, oh,
And I think you should do that. I think that's a perfect social experiment because like something, and here's the thing, right? When we defend China, when we defend DPRK, whatever, we're not saying any country's perfect. They all have a past. They've all made mistakes in their past and all of those kind of things. Whatever the words you need me to say, I'll say I've said them now. Just pretend. But China, like we can look at modern China and we see that modern China protects languages, right? Like across the board, whatever languages that exist in China, they protect those languages. They allow people to speak those languages in their own locations and even outside of those locations. Like, so we can see that there's a fundamental difference in their relations. Like we can fundamentally observe that when you compare that to the way like in the US and Canada, it's the languages have survived in spite of the state because of like a few militant people hanging on to that language and continuously trying to pass it down to their kids or whoever, or in some cases their grandkids because their kids didn't learn the language or you know so like and that's the thing. That's why it's like Perenni says, the revolution that feeds the children gets my support, and that's my criteria too. But also the revolution that like protects languages of their people like China does, that also is why I defend China. And I do it without apologizing, and I do it without, like I will defend China no matter how much it makes people uncomfortable. And I mean, I think we have to do that because I think like it's so important not for us to just build solidarity among like our communities here, not just between First Nations and Black and Native Hawaiian communities here, but also build that solidarity with actual Korean comrades who are fighting against imperialism in DPRK and South Korea. The same type of solidarity with Chinese comrades who are fighting an extremely valiant fight against U.S. imperialism in a broad and diverse way all over the world. Like that's why I think it is so important, even if it does make people, I guess, talk funny about us for a while.
yeah. And one more thing I just want to say, because I see there's some Korean, or obviously DPRK supporter, Korea supporters supporting all of Korea, no longer having imperialism in it. But also, it unites that and also Hawaii and China is that there is Korean is one of these ethnic minorities that is in China, and they will even say like, hey, like we actually are able to practice our Korean culture and language as ethnically Korean people inside of China. It's one of the 56, right? And similarly, I don't know if Manapua is still here, but like the word Manapua, right, is also it's another example of that win-win cooperation, or like of the Hawaiians, the Chinese in Hawaii, right, where we were the hosts at that time. Like China is the host of those Korean people as a minority there. China hosts many minorities. I mean, many people in America have can't live in America, and now they are being allowed to live in Vietnam and China as hosts, and they're allowed to practice. I mean, as long as they don't try to overthrow their countries, right? And Hawaii was the host for the Chinese culture in the 1800s, right? As they were becoming destitute, right, suffering, being impoverished, right. Opium wars and forced narco trafficking by the British French was being pushed in. They're coming to Hawaii, and the Manapua was actually one of those win-win cooperative. It comes from the word Hawaiian word mea ona pua'a, which is the tasty pork thing, right? It's basically because it was a steamed pork bun. The Manapua it's still eaten today as well. The
Yeah,
steamed pork bun.
Monopua actually gave us a lesson about this last night for those of you who tuned into Monopua stream.
Oh, you did? Okay, well there you go. Yeah, and it's like it's a food that it was like a Chinese style bun, but it made with the with the ingredients in Hawaii, and it was known and it's eaten. And another one I like to bring up is that Keanu Reeves is a descendant of one of these ancient Hawaiian Chinese Hui cooperation, but they also organizations where they cooperated, and also just families, right? Keanu Reeves' family is his grandma that he actually stayed with that he really liked was a Hawaiian Chinese lady from I forget exactly what where her family was, but they were somewhere on the east side of Hawaii, and on the northeast side of Oahu, not Hawaii, of Oahu, there is a lot of families still like Akana, Akau. There's all these. There's like the um some of them. There's like I know a lot of people in that area. My brother works in sustainability and land back activities in that area, and like they're like 200. They are Hawaiian and they're also Chinese. They practice lion dance. Like I practice lion dance, but we also, went to luau's and we practiced, canoe paddling and all those kinds of things. And it's like, and the food, the Manapua is like one of those foods that has come out of that mutual win-win coexistence, right? And then there's also still distinct Chinese practices and there's distinct Hawaiian practices, and there's some that are kind of like, in between. And like that is part of why the food in Hawaii is some of the best in the world as well. It's because you have so many cultures mixing and intermingling, and we don't have this like weird aversion to spice and cooking with a variety of flavors that certain European cuisine does as well. And so, but anyways, I just want to point out that that historically and today there's like a through line through that whole space and time, right? Which is the way in which civilization is organized, right? Which is that if there are cultural differences, the people should be allowed to coexist. And it also goes to nature, right? Like we should try to like not interrupt, we should not try to unnecessarily disrupt, because you have to do a certain amount of agriculture, right? In any kind of, you have to do a certain amount of alteration to the natural environment, whether you're doing ahupua'a style Hawaiian agriculture, or you're doing, the Chinese rice farming or various indigenous peoples peoples around the world's farming practices, right? But still, it's kind of like we try to minimally disrupt the environment, because we don't want, we want to keep as much diversity there as we possibly can, and also B, like we want to preserve that for the future, right? And so, and obviously like, today China also leads in the regreening and renewable. They're like undesertifying huge swaths of the land with like the size of Germany. There's a huge. I was just watching some of the videos of that, and because you want to keep the diversity of the culture and also of the environment, because that creates a long-term, strong, sustainable ecosystem and human civilization, and also ecological land or ecologically thriving landmass. You don't want monocropping. That's what's part of what's destroying. That's why there's Maui wildfires in part. And that's also why there's California wildfires in part.
That's why Canada has wildfires like they do right now. Because
exactly.
of all of this planting of these carbon offset trees. And what they do is they plant softwoods because they grow the fastest. So they just want to plant a huge amount of softwoods. They have really shallow root system. They grow really fast. Looks like they've planted a whole bunch of trees that grow up to be adult trees really quickly, right? Which, that's not the way you plant forests. You plant a forest with a diversity of trees and species.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Somebody commented on Keanu Reeves. Like his dad was a bit. Or his dad was also Reeves. Like actually, Keanu Reeves' aunt was a Sacred Heart's sister. I knew her. Her name was Sister Mary Gertrude. I know that's a Euro Christian thing, but she was also like what was Keanu Reeves' dad's name? His cousin Hau'oli Reeves was a famous bodyboarder, like a wave catcher in Hawaii. Like he was really good, not surfing but bodyboarding. Um, And yeah, so he's known. Well, he didn't spend most of his life in Hawaii. Unfortunately, his dad did get arrested for I think it was heroin dealing or something in the airport in the Big Island. Unfortunately, but but also I did a whole stream about that. Whereas I think a lot of that is because of that time where there was kind of trying to tie that into what you said, like because of the, especially in the 20th century, that kind of suppression of Hawaii, of indigenous culture. Like I think his dad's Keanu Reeves' grandpa's generation, right, had a lot of that memory erased. Like my parents, some of my cousins, certain Hawaiian families, they perpetuate as much as they could. Right, it was illegal to openly like practice. You couldn't teach Hawaiian history. You couldn't openly speak Hawaiian, but you have to secretly transmit a lot of that down. And I feel like Taika Waititi is also another Pacific Islander, right? He made a movie called Boy that's about the experience of like having a dad that grandpa was sent off into all kind of wars. Grandpa was brainwashed by empire. A dad went to jail, struggling to survive in the 1950s, 60s. Part of racialized police targeting him. In Aotearoa, this movie Boy. The movie Boy is like very. It feels like it could be like a lot of my Hawaiian. Feels like it could be a native Hawaiian story in Hawaii. And Keanu Reeves' dad was like somebody who was also like, in part, he was like a victim of the U.S. occupation. Like, didn't really know exactly who he was, and it's kind of like was kind of I think I'm pretty sure he served in the military at some point, and that like breaks you. Like if you don't come out of if you're a Hawaiian and you go into U.S. military, right? And you like just you kill vast quantities of your relatives in Asia, like in Vietnam, and I mean it's bad enough if you're a white person doing that. That causes you all kind of problems. But for Hawaiians, like we and all of the Pacific are targeted as cannon fodder to go into like some of our lead Hawaiian activists, like Uncle Walter Riddy. There's like Bumpy Kanahela. He actually leads Nation of Hawaii. These are all Vietnam. They're Hawaiians that are brainwashed into fighting as imperial cannon fodder in wars like Vietnam for the United States under the U.S. illegal occupation, and they came back. If they survived, right, and they survived mentally, a lot of them are just broken, right? They're just broken people. And I encounter I would if he wasn't directly from that, that whole push is part of what broke his. I think that's part of what broke his dad. It's part of what broke my dad. My dad didn't go to war. My dad was a hippie who stayed home, right? And it was like flower girls, and he like did acid going to a Jimi Hendrix concert. But he also was like in his mind, right? He's been brainwashed, and he's confused. I can't talk to him honestly about so much, right?
Yeah.
And if you
That's
went and
hard.
fought for the U.S. Yeah, yeah, right. And it's hard enough just to be brainwashed, but if you went and fought for the United States, particularly that Boomer, Gen X, and the slightly older than Boomer. When you go older than Boomer, my grandpa was actually my grandpa was the note taker for the Communist Party in Hawaii, which is actually the biggest. If you count Hawaii as a territory of the U.S., it was the biggest Communist Party in the whole U.S. in the earlier like 1890s to the 30s or 40s, right? There were actually massacres against communists and left in Hawaii by the U.S. and the sugar plantations. Filipino Hawaiians were targeted on this island. And my grandpa was the Communist Party like note taker. He hid that from his family. But then so he kind of knew, right? There was problems with the United States with this colonialism. He knew there's serious problems with they were erasing all of our history, right? But his son, right? He believes he's a white liberal American Catholic, right? And brainwashed. And if you went like so, let me finish that up. So if you went, those Hawaiians who went and fought, the Boomer Hawaiians that went and fought and killed, they came back, and a lot of them they saw the truth, and they were some of the leaders, right? Nation of Hawaii. Walter Riddy is on Molokai, which is a very Aina Mamona and Nation of Hawaii are two like the biggest anti-colonial, anti-imperial Native Hawaiian organizations. I mean, there's many all over the place, but those are also they're also like the survivors of this dark, U.S. primacy Cold War era that are leading. And like I'm like a millennial, and like me and so we're like trying to recapture this from our parents. And anyway, this is just like that's just like lots of that's more history of the 20th century in Hawaii, I think. Keanu Reeves.
There you go, comrades. Does anybody have any questions or anything else like that you want to ask Comrade SilverSpook while we've got him here on the stream?
Yeah, you can ask me. I should probably get going pretty soon. I know it's been on for 2.5 hours, so yeah, you can ask
Yep,
whatever
we'll see
questions you
if
want.
there's any final questions in chat for you here.
His grandpa was in Korea. Yeah, I mean, I know Hawaiians. If you were of that generation, you could have got sent to Korea.
Yeah.
Um,
I just want to say I've
uh,
really appreciated you both today. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Red Rust. Everybody's saying they love this collab. Glad they caught this. Make sure you follow SilverSpook because you catch this fire. You the same kind of fire you get from Larry during the day. You get from SilverSpook at night. So make sure you follow.
I apologize to Radis Speed that I stream when you sleep. I will, what did it? If I ever come on Larry, I'll be up earlier for that. On Saturday, I do an early YouTube stream on my YouTube channel. Uh, Around the time I started this one, or Pacific, Eastern. Um, um, oh, I didn't realize I was wearing a Smashing Pumpkins shirt. That's just incidental. I mean, the Smashing Pumpkins are not a native Hawaiian. They're not an ancient Hawaiian fixture. In case you're wondering, that's a random rock band from the 1990s. I just happened. Like what I had like a serious goth phase. I dress up in a lot of various goth and alt outfits a lot of time. But that was part of like I listened to a lot of like alternative music in the 90s because it's kind of
It's
like
incredible how
that
similar
was,
we are. I too like I dressed all in black. I had a giant like Liberty spike at one time in my life, 12-foot high Liberty spike like mohawk going on. I was all into the punk and the metal too.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Isn't Billy Corgan a bit of chat? Unfortunately, I haven't I don't even want to watch some of the things that he has lately said, but I just it was like I think alt rock music was just kind of like I had a lot of I didn't know anything. Like I said, I didn't I don't know if I brought it up, but my mom, right? My parents didn't speak any Hawaiian language. Like had Hawaiian practices and they like Hawaiian. My dad viewed his Hawaiianness kind of like outside of himself, like as a white liberal looking in as at Hawaiianness. It's really weird. And so like they raised me to be like an American white Christian, whatever they thought that was, right? But I still had access, like there's still Hawaiian, but it's kind of like tangentially, unofficially, right? But like I remember like a lot of it was trying. I knew there was something deeply wrong with the American Christian forced Christianization, doing Pledge of Allegiance every single day. We did like two patriotic songs plus the Pledge of Allegiance every single day. And went to this Ivy League theater school in Hawaii, right across the street from Obama, his school, and it's like it was really horrible. I mean, like that was like it was they were trying to forcefully Americanize me. Like it was like it's like I see the South Koreans waving even the Israeli flag around, and it's like we have to wave American flags around and be
Yeah.
like, we all love America,
And
best
I
place
think that's
ever.
some of the reason why I like very quickly, realized that well, the attacks against DPRK in China and Russia even were based on just propaganda. Like I think because like you say, I sort of had like a similar experience where it's just like oh my god, like they're just this is just truth and reconciliation like settler bullshit that they're trying to program me on. And that's I'm sure this is the same reason why they want me to hate and be scared of DPRK and why they keep saying about the dynasty and the authoritarian leadership of Kim Il Sung. So like even before I guess I was like a communist, I never really bought it. Like I always was like something does not add up about what they say about USSR and what they say about Korea and stuff. Even though I never knew how to articulate it or what exactly the lies were, something always seemed off about it to me, which I think helped me get to that anti-imperialist position perhaps quicker than some Westerners or people who don't have that same experience.
Yeah, exactly. Rankar Shaw says my parents yelled at us for even daring to speak pidgin. Pidgin English in Hawaii is like it's like it's a kind of it's like I think it's called a Creole now, but it's like a mix of Hawaiian, a Japanese, Chinese. English words all together, and yeah, that was like it was bad. It was being Mahu. I'm also like queer, like non-binary, gender fluid person. Mahu is like a is a third. It's similar to Two Spirit in certain native cultures, but not like identical. But it's like to be Mahu was a slur. You would say that there's a game called Smear the Queer. It's basically it was an anti-gay, queer game where it's that was all U.S. installed culture. That was part of it. The queerphobia, the misogyny, um, banning the language, hating anything to do with your Hawaiian language, hating yourself. Catholic, Protestant, the public school or otherwise. There's again every single school is a boarding school, not just Kamehameha schools. There was Mormon schools. Every single school punished killed children for being Hawaiian, practicing Hawaiian, speaking Hawaiian, and like yeah. So and like the alternative, like the alt rock music was kind of like in the '90s, like a lot of interesting things for at least for me, and it was happening. I was also a high schooler, right? But I was listening to like Smashing Pumpkins. A lot of the music, at least in that time, was about like there's something deeply wrong with this fucked up culture. Like despite all my rage, I'm a rat in the cage. I'm a Hawaiian in an American imperial capitalist cage and what I'm gonna grow up and be a freaking stock trader, program drones. I mean, how am I gonna survive in this America? It's a lot of it's like, a lot of it is like this. There's something deeply wrong with the U.S. It's consumerist culture because consumerism in the '90s that was a big thing, right? Communism is over. It's the unipolar hegemonic American moment. We're all gonna shop forever, and and it's like I didn't know what Hawaiian really was. Like I did some paddling, and I like but my parents, right? They're like, you got to be a good Christian white Catholic. You got to go make money on Wall Street, or you got to go to Harvard. Get into the really great college, the best one you can, and make it big in the great USA, right? Like I said, I almost became I was pushed to become a high frequency trading algorithm programmer. Like I got a programming degree that said go, make economy scream in Africa and make tons of money for yourself, right? That was like what they fucking like encouraged. Like, become a real estate agent, big programmer, or work for the military, program drones for freaking Lockheed Martin or something, right? That was what was encouraged. That's still what is encouraged in certain families in Hawaii, right? It's like like in South Korea. I'm sure it's very similar, right? To succeed, you do what Uncle Sam wants and get as high as you can in the computer class. Win the Squid Game, and that's the goal in your life, and then also fight and die for the U.S. empire,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
and it's like so like I think a lot of that was just like rebelling against that and like Deus Ex mentioned that game. That was a game like it wasn't just Rage Against the Machine was one of the music one of the bands. I was like they're saying something very interesting there, right? Like make up the Matrix, obviously. And the Deus Ex when it came out, it was like I remember when I played that game, I was really into games. That's why I became a game developer. I love games. I played them to survive all the anti-Hawaiian. I was also fat phobic because I was a bigger Hawaiian guy. It was just like body size wise, like we are like different shape than like Asians and white people, which is it was all like Twinkie sellout wannabe billionaire Asians and rich white people going to this school I went to, and I was like the one Hawaiian guy, and they were like I was bullied a lot for that. And I played games a lot, and I remember like thinking like while I was playing some of the games like Deus Ex, I was like maybe this whole U.S. my parents have been telling me to like my parents have been pushing me to fight on the wrong side, like the side that the main character starts on, right? Fighting for trying to stop evil communist Cubans and Russians and Chinese from giving people the medication they need for diseases that could be treatable but are exacerbated by capitalist U.S. healthcare, right? And I was like, I remember, and I got further along that, like, and I kind of felt like it was actually like Russian, like RT at the time, like in the '90s, there was really, I just like this really crappy Western media, and then like there were some actual journalists. That was where I kind of really started learning, kind of like in the backwards, in a roundabout way about what Hawaii was. It was actually through like Russian, not necessarily Russian media, but it was like RT, which had like Empire Files that had
Yeah,
like
yeah, which allowed voices that mainstream media didn't. And it's similar experience for me too, actually, is Russia Today talking about like some histories in the US and stuff because again, like you say, they allow Abby Barton and like other voices that just didn't get on mainstream media. Yeah. Which I mean, that goes to show you like why there is a effort to try and silence like CGTN English language sites and Russia Today, or why they try and accuse communists who have similar talking points as Russia Today maybe as being Russian agents.
Yeah, Russian agents. I mean, I don't know how many times has Lee Camp and Abby Martin and uh, yeah, they've all been accused of being Russian agents. I mean, um, but my badge, you know, like I say, if you're not, if the old Russian, the old Soviet Russian saying it, if you don't, I think it's one of their sayings. If you're not taking flak, you're not over the target, right? So
Yeah.
like, if you're not getting attacked by the empire, right? You're not doing anything useful, right? So if they banned, I made a video, I made a song. Big Teal has heard it. I know at least two people in the stream has heard it. It's called Muammar Gaddafi should have been a banker, and then he would be alive and celebrated in Washington. I made a song about
Let's see the
about
Gaddafi
right.
emotes, comrades, in chat.
Yeah, so the that video has been officially banned by the United States through YouTube. It's the corporate state of the U.S. empire has banned that video. So that's how I know. I have been accused of being Russian agent by Tony Blinken. I don't know if he himself, but I know that um, I'm not big enough. I'm not like like obviously Ivory Martin and them. They have a much bigger platform, so they get hit.
Well,
But
I'm tiny and I get accused of it. I've been told that I'm taking Xi Jinping bucks or that that Putin's
Putin bucks.
got to be paying me for sure.
Yeah, like yeah, it's like and that's how you know you're actually doing something. I mean, just to circle back a little bit, on the Middle East, right? Because if you support, you're saying like if you support Palestine, a lot of people, even like liberal and not very actively anti-imperialist, really people will say, oh yeah, we got to support Palestine. It's still hard to say that certainly at colleges and a lot of businesses, and try to silence that even still because of the lobbies, etc. But like if you say free Palestine, but if you say, well, we need to support Iran because that is one of the major, entities that's supporting Palestine, and a lot of the resistance that exists wouldn't exist without Iran, right? And then they'll get up all pissed off and they'd be like, no, we got to get rid of Iran, and it's so great that Syria was overthrown, and then we got to get rid
I
of,
was I was about to
you
say
know,
actually a really good one right now is if you say maybe Assad being overthrown wasn't such a good thing. The first thing you will hear is you're an Assadist or what you just love Assad or something. And it's just like I'm not saying that I love Assad or anything per se, but I'm just saying that like his real crime was that he opposed U.S. imperialism and he opposed Israeli expansionism being the unsinkable aircraft carrier in the Middle East. Like that was his real crime. And like now we're even seeing like that some of these prisons that we saw being opened with these prisoners coming out were actually controlled by HTS the entire time. It wasn't actually controlled by Assad.
yeah, it's like here's a prison where all are U.S. backed right wing extremists, but these happen to be the ones in the Turkestan and Salafist ones. Here is where they done a bunch of horrible things to people. I'm so no, that's actually Assad did all that. I think they found like a graveyard, right? And they said this is the mass graves. Like this is eh, like it's like this. Like I remember they talk about oh my god, look Putin they butcherized, he killed all these innocent people in his hospital. Turns out the Ukrainian U.S. backed Ukrainians did it's like almost always, right? It's like they do the atrocity and then they accuse the other side of the atrocity, just to take footage of their atrocity
Yeah.
and say that Russia or Iran or Syria, in this case Syria did it. And we're talking about like there's one video going around of all this amazing Chinese food, and then Western liberals are going, oh my god, this Japanese food is Japanese street food is so amazing, but it's actually Chinese food, and then they got all pissed off, right? It's like if it's a good thing, then our Japan, if it's incontrovertibly like it's hard to cover up that's Asian. If it's a good thing, then our Japan did it. And if it's a bad thing, then the China did it. If it's a bad thing, then the thing we just did in the West Asia, and obviously Assad did it, or and if it's a good thing, then we obviously did. Like apparently, right? The Jolani guy is like, I'm the reformed, I support women's rights and LGBT. He won't be seen shaking. He won't even shake hands with women, but apparently he's like he's the woke Al Qaeda, whatever they're calling him.
Yeah, reformed.
Yeah.
He won't hold election for 4 years, but he's reformed.
We don't need. It's like that in the South Korean president, right? It's like we're the most democratic. South Korea is such democracy compared to the authoritarian North Korea. The guy that self declares himself, he starts martial law, say starting with military dictatorship, as they have done I think what KJ was pointing out, they've done that like so many times, right? Um, Everything they accuse South Korea of is something South Korea has basically done, right? At the same time.
Yeah, it's getting blatant.
Yeah, it's sad. I hope that people say the free Palestine. This is why I said like it's like you can't just say, oh, this is the large entity, that's a small entity. That means that the small entity is the good one because it's small, right? And the big one is bad, like the state. That you can't just look at a state and go, that's a state that's bad, right?
Yeah.
In the same way that, right, because it depends, right? Is it the U.S. backed legal state of Hawaii against the Hawaiians? I sure like they're not gonna call the Hawaiians a bunch of rebel evil terrorists or something right now, but like if we ever got enough power, the U.S. I mean, they might jump to that. It's hard because it's very close to home, but I mean, that's something that we have to prepare for as well, right? But it's like we're not. It's like versus like but because Hawaiians are smaller in the state of Hawaii, in terms of de facto like power we hold economically, politically, versus Iran is a state, and then so that's big and evil, right? It's similarly like the flags, right? Just like if you just say free something and you throw it at certain like Western and like less educated liberal types, they'll just be like, "Oh yeah, free that," right? Like I want to do like a test, like free Nazi Germany. I wonder if people would just share that around. Oh yeah, free them for sure, right?
Yeah, free Weimar Germany. Free Weimar Germany. Yeah, they would. They would.
And freeing place, like free. It's kind of like it's what Hakeem was saying about Jordan Peterson, right? Like having like that's like a very nebulous, vague, indefensible, like not falsifiable position. Freeing things is good, right? It's kind of like being a good person is good, yes, okay. But being a good person is good, and freeing things is good. So we have to free Ukraine and free South Korea, right? It's like no, like right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have any material, historical analysis behind it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's so important that we keep connecting those dots. That like we talk about Palestine, but we connect that with settler colonialism here. We connect that with the legal occupation of Hawaii, and we connect that with like the continued aggression against DPRK and against Cuba and against Russia and all of those things. And I just want to say, like, I've been on Facebook, I've been online for a long time, but I'm very new to Twitch, and so I was very relieved to have find your stream when I first started streaming on here, because you still are, and one of the only other like anti-imperialist voices like staunchly that I see on Twitch. Like there's so very few of us. Like Monopua is another. I know Rob Rousseau's pretty good. But like there's just so few of us, it feels like, it's like every other one, like I say, I tune into, and then all of a sudden it'll be like, well, Uyghur genocide, or they'll talk about Russia doing a ethnic cleansing against Ukrainians or something like this, and then I'm like pulling my hair out in the chat, like in this debate that I don't want to be in, but I can't help myself because I got a big mouth or whatever. So
yeah. Hard, but I slowly but surely I think it will grow. I think as the contradictions get so intense and the U.S. starts running out of money, because the AES and the resistance and Central South America, Mexico is just like I would say I was going off for Mexico has more balls than Denmark and Canada, right? They were like, oh, we love America, America's our friend, and Mexico is just like you can't. I mean, obviously they also have their own problems with settler colonialism as well, but also like in the greater context of things,
oh my god, it's funny you mentioned that.
Like,
just a sidetrack, sorry, just to not mean to cut you off, but before you came on, I got raped by a streamer, and they got in a big fight with me, arguing with me that Mexico is not settler colonialism. And I got into this big debate with the streamer who raided me just earlier, just right before you came on, and me trying to explain to them that Mexico is settler colonial. Like, yes, the government that exists now is way better, and, they're doing a lot of good things to protect indigenous people, but the history of Mexico is a settler colony. Where do you think the Spanish came from? Like, so yeah. Right before you came on, I had to deal with that.
Yeah. That's yeah. That I think I saw a little bit of that. Yeah, it's like and like I obviously I like if in the future there's a place that's called the U.S. or Mexico. I even said like if the United States, if you can call it whatever what you call it is actually not like what we said, right? It's like we don't want to be indigenous people. We want to be our people that have our full rights, fully equals with other peoples, right? As Kanaka Mali. So if one day the U.S. and Mexico, right, is doing better, but it still has problems. If whatever they call it, right, what we call the United States, the United Federation of what it is called is not as important of like what it materially, economically, politically is, right? And like, yeah, Mexico is moving in a better. Part of the reason why Mexico is moving in a better direction, and I'm like, that's great that they're doing that, is like they are not just going along with the U.S. imperial design. Unlike, let's say, Canada and a lot of Europe. Europe is going, oh shit, why is America going to screw us, trying to screw us now? So like, it's kind of, that's one we were saying like it's sometimes if a Republican is in, it actually will cause a net benefit, even if there are horrible mask off about it, right? Because right, it could, but even still, Canada, because now the U.S. is taking its vassals and it's being more directly attacked. Trump is more directly attacking them. He seems like he's what he's going to do, right? But it's Mexico that's resisting, and in part because Mexico is not, it still has more self determination and it is working with the Belt and Road with China. That's it's like it's and it is it's more better in its position supporting Palestine just in general. Like it has its own many internal contradictions, including its history of colonialism there, Spanish colonialism. But like it's like it's it's moving in it seems to it's currently to be moving in a positive direction. But and it's it's one of those complications of history, right? It's like it's so much to disentangle, and we have to. It's a lot of learning and a lot of study to really get all of it. But that's why you have to have people that are really in. You have to find the people that are really in the struggle, in the place that you're like talking about. Like somebody came into our stream and it was like, "Oh, Hawaiians should do X and Y and Z," and like, who are you? Or like some white liberal from what, New York. Well, and Holly said, "Hey, you should read up about Hawaii." And they're like, "I don't have time to read this and that. I need to tell Hawaiians what to do." And I'm like, and I was thinking like Uncle Ho, like no investigation, no right to speak. I mean, like, why do you believe that you? I mean, I don't know everything about Mexico and everything about Canada and the U.S., but I tried, I tried to share based upon like the amount that I have investigated, and if I haven't investigated, I should investigate more into that, right? And like, but like this, but that colonial mentality is just like I get to tell you everything about who you are as a Hawaiian, never reading a single thing, never being in Hawaii, and definitely not being in the anti-imperial struggle with Native Hawaiians, right? And so I feel like that's like, yeah, that's definitely like that's a huge that's a huge thing that's happening there. I want to say one more thing about somebody who said they want to balkanize China. I mean, like, yeah, they want to balkanize China and Russia, and it's because they have been successful at resisting imperialism and capitalism, especially in the case of China, and obviously in the case of DPRK. And like we have to, we as not just Native people, but all of us have to view this as a planetary struggle, that we act locally, right? We try to learn and use the internet that thank goodness we still have, to try to do whatever we can. That's what we try to kind of wrap up. I gotta get out of here soon. That's what we try to do at SilverSpook Cooperative. Somebody asked if I work directly. I don't work directly with Nation of Hawaii, which is very good organization. I mean, the Nation of Hawaii, the Lahui of Hawaii, is a real thing under U.S. occupation, but there's an organization, Nation of Hawaii. I think it's nationofhawaii.org. They also have an Instagram I know of. I know people that work with them, like Keone DeFranco. But we're on the Big Island. We're not on the Oahu, where their base is in the northeast side of Oahu. Like, they're doing very important work, and we do support that. Here at the SilverSpook Cooperative, just to kind of finish up, like, so we make, coming back to the beginning, like, so I try to do as much anti-imperial, like Native Hawaiian centered, obviously, education, on top of entertaining people, playing music, making games, playing the games on the stream, and also making games that we do in a non-capitalist hui or for Hawaiian and Chinese that practice our non-capitalist, no bosses methods of organizing work, we try to make the games like Neofeud. Anybody who works on their games is as a cooperative will be paid whatever exactly as a percentage of work they put in, as opposed to the big capitalist games. And so that's why we say when you buy the games like Neofeud, it does support us directly to keep doing this work. I mean, that's part of why a real reason, like I brought up, is that if I work for a university or God forbid a freaking giant hedge fund programming for a bank somewhere, right? Everything I say would be controlled. I would not be able to say many things. I would get in trouble. I have been fired from 2 jobs actually for sort of saying not even close to as radical things or radical in the West as I'm saying right now things. And so that's why we try to live in that way so that and make the products. Obviously, we can't fully disconnect from all the companies. I need to use US, a corporate capitalist internet, and use certain services. But like the games, at least we sell them on Steam. We also sell them on itch. But like that, the revenue from that, I mean, similar to what a lot of the countries at a smaller scale, what those African countries that are building self-reliance and using their resources and their own work to benefit their own people. And what Nation of Hawaii is doing as another organization in Hawaii, we try the best to do that at the SilverSpook Cooperative by selling the products of our labor, taking that revenue, pushing it back into doing more of this education in a way that it cannot. Yemen just banned import of flour, right? And also I think concrete, right? That's part of their self-reliance. That's like we don't rely on University of Hawaii or some bank or U.S. corporation for our livelihood, right? We can also at SilverSpook Cooperative, all our land is growing food of some kind. We have like at least 10 or 12 different food. It's a plural crop garden basically. We have coconuts, we have oranges, we have sweet potato, all kind. So even if the U.S. was to cut us off from like the supermarket, a Walmart or Foodland or the Target, they wouldn't be able to starve us out personally.
Yeah.
And we try to be as self-reliant in that way as we possibly can, and we're just like one part of the total nation of Hawaii against the U.S. colonial occupation, trying to build a socialist path, win-win cooperative world in these various ways. If you're asking anybody who question, if you don't know what this flag is, it's not the official flag of Hawaii. Where is my? I think a lot. There is the official flag of Hawaii. You can look it up. It has some people ask why don't you have that one up sometimes, or why do you have that one up? This is it's a flag that was designed by a Hawaiian person like later, but it's based upon the coat of arms of Kamehameha, one of our early leaders in Hawaii, and the official country of Hawaii flag has a Union Jack in it, so some people like get confused by that. I'm not pro British, but in Hawaii everybody knows what that. It has red and blue.
It looks like
red
here.
and white.
I'll just put it on the screen so people can see what it looks like right here.
Yeah, exactly. So that flag is that the red, white, blue stripes, and then the Union Jack. It represents that it's part of it is the history of the 1800s. This extreme power of the colonial European countries and empires in that time, right? So Hawaii, a part of its negotiation to not be completely colonized, and it was a sovereign, independent nation, was that it was part of showing like allegiance, but not colonization by the British, right? So we're an independent country that was allied. So it was a compromise. I feel like if Hawaii made another flag today, they wouldn't make that. But that was the people. There's enough time to get into all the discussion about Hawaii is evil because they had monarchy, kings, and this and that. It's a long, but part of that was like you had to appear. Like, why did Hawaiians dress with the coats that look like British dress? Why do they have palace? Why is there Iolani Palace? Some people bring that up, and the flag is that way because it was part of trying to maintain parity. To be civilized was to be civilization equals in Christian. Civilization equals looking like a European country. Civilized equals being nice to the most powerful empire at the time, the British Empire, right? And so. And just in case anybody had that question, I know some people maybe know that, but many people don't. But that's why that flag is there as well. And yeah. And decolonizers. um. Anyways, is there any last questions? I should probably get going. Anything else? Anybody?
Any last questions or comments for Comrade SilverSpook before he says goodbye, comrades?
Um. Hey, thanks a lot, Strin Sam. Always good to see you as well. I just want to say before I forget, yeah, thank you so much, Larry, for having me on. You're doing very important work. Very important work. You do more streaming than I do. You get the official, like, not that you need the official native SilverSpook silver medal of approval. You get the silver the silver bullet that blows away Tony Blinken in the video game.
Well, thank you, comrade. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you
Yeah,
coming on to chat with us. Actually been wanting you to come on for quite a long time because, like I say, it's, I'm out here all the time screaming all these anti-imperialist lines for people. It's nice to have someone on who is in the, so people can see I'm not just making this up, everyone.
yeah, totally. Also, a complaint. I see Complaining Laney around. I just want to shout out. We know Buffort helps us out a lot. It does a lot of sharing in the chat, and Complaining Laney and Monogatake and Stern Sam and actually, like, yeah, there's so many crossover people. It's like, I know almost all these people. That's really we know these are all really good, very informed, or very good at learning comrades all over this chat.
Yeah,
You
we
like
appreciate all of you comrades in chat.
Yeah. Since this is where we are at during the day. Yeah, I guess, yeah, because I do stream later and you stream a bit earlier than me. I guess it works out if you. What time do you usually end, by the way?
I play it by ear. Like, sometimes I'll stream for 8 hours, which is about how long I've been going now. Sometimes I'll stream as long as 15 hours, depending on what I feel like.
Oh, right on. This is where you hang out before coming on my stream. Oh, that's good to hear. You're in the good hands. Yeah. Anyways, obviously I can talk forever, so I should probably wrap this up. Yeah, but one more time, aloha, mahalo, aloha. That just means very big. Thank you. Kukiai, kukiai aina. That was defend. We for Hawaii, and of course, kukiai, DPRK, and China and Russia and all of our other allies and all indigenous peoples as well. And follow Manapua, who just started, another Native Hawaiian who just started streaming.
Follow
And thanks,
Manapua,
Christina.
follow SilverSpook, tune into SilverSpook, and I'll have to go on your channel for a conversation. And I think we'll have to have you come back on for another panel real soon. This has been a great conversation.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. Okay. Aloha, everybody. Bye.
Everybody say bye. Thanks for coming again. Appreciate you.